Good morning. Good morning. Come on in. Come on in, everyone. Huddle up. Good morning, Frazzled. Good morning, Gerri. Good to see you. Ro, if you're still here. Inga Brown, if you're here. A little bit better. Not a lot. My stomach's really upset for the last couple days. But it'll be fine. Good morning. Good morning. Life with Mommy, Mar. And let me see here. Let me.
Wait.
Trying to update the spreadsheet really quickly. Then I can get back to.
Wait.
So I can't see anybody right now. Wow. Okay, I did it. I did it. And I forgot to call you last night, Mar. I saw that right when I was cooking some raw meat. Ugh. And then I forgot. I got busy doing stuff. Can you see better? Did Jack bring you a sick? No, I don't think it's Jack. He seems fine. Yeah, he feels great. Which I'm glad. Don't get me wrong. Very happy about that. Good morning, Try Me. This silly boy over here. Okay. We're gonna kick everything. Really? Oh my God, are you serious? No way. Oh, that sucks. Wow. I feel a little bit better today. Try Me. Thank you. Stop. Oh, my Atlantis. This one's going to take apart the joint. So yesterday was a lot, right? Zulema. Yikes. One thing I was thinking about, though, is, she wasn't, right? Yeah, he's not trying to do that, Gerri. Oh, thank you, Life with Mommy. Thank you. I know. I was laying down. I was like, oh, my gosh, I really want to say something right now. Yes, it was. Hey, Mama. What I was thinking, though, was, when they were talking about her giving conflicting stories and stuff to law enforcement, I'm like, well, they just said they gave her immunity. So they didn't do that for no reason. So, especially initially, I assume they were all telling stories, trying to, hopefully she's telling the truth now. I think maybe she is. I'm not trying to give her any pass, because every one of those assholes could have saved some lives. Period. They just could have. So it's very irritating. Yeah, I heard that. I did hear the jurors had a hard time yesterday. you know, really the prosecution is really kind of wrapping this up to a good position, you know? I can't see him getting out of this. I really can't. I don't know what. Sadly, he's not. This is my opinion. He's not going to get out of it, but he's going to have his daughter do something that she may have to. I don't know how she'll live with the rest of her life. They really have. I believe that's what I think too. And you know what I think? I think in some ways they probably listen to what people are saying, maybe. But I don't know. Blake has been really good the whole time. Yeah, that's right. And she put on no defense. Right. She didn't even try to. Yeah, they are. Oh my God. Gerri, I didn't ask you. Did you go back the other day and listen to everything that you had missed? Did you hear the judge get mad? To be exact, it was Preparing People Conference. Yeah, you're right. Yes, it was. Yes, it's Preparing People. That's right. Mom was the boss. Yes. Did you love that? Oh my God. Like, you're doing it to me. But to be fair, you know what? That judge has told him that a few times. And he just keeps doing it. I think the judge has been quite good about it. And of course, he's going to allow him a little bit more leeway, probably, because it is a capital case, because, you know, there's going to be appeals regardless, but still, he already did not let him, you know, he asked to be out of it, all this stuff, and the judge said no. So I think he might be given a little bit of a leeway on some of this, but yeah, yesterday was wild, wasn't it? Jeez. And I can't imagine what's in for today. I know. He really is a jerk. Even when the judge is telling him to stop, he keeps going. Blows my mind. Wow, Louise. And this dog. It's okay. She gets excited. You're so pretty. All right. Well, I'm going to get it going then. Hey, Canine. You're at the doctor with your grandson, but listening. Okay. Well, we will give you something to listen to. Jack is trying really hard to tear up this book, and I really like the book. I should put it away somewhere. Actually, yeah, I need to. Mama's a boss. Your babies need this book. Anyway, you're packing and listening as well. Okay. All right, I'm going to get it going. Oh. Yeah, that's what I need to do, Frazzled.
That's right.
Because I really love this book and I don't want.
All right, I'll remind the witness you're still under oath for purposes of your testimony here today, Mr.
I want him to let me read to him, but he doesn't want that.
Good morning.
He doesn't want that.
Good morning.
Dr. Warren, yesterday we left off. We had spoken about J.J. Vallow's autopsy, and we're in the process of speaking about Tylee Ryan's.
Right.
And I think we left off on talking about her medical history. When you received Tylee Ryan, How did you receive her remains?
So as I briefly spoke about yesterday, I received her remains in multiple bags. 2 bags were in black body bags that were sealed. One of the bags was a brown paper bag with multiple other smaller brown paper bags within that bag. So essentially what we did is the first thing we did is we x-rayed all of the bags. I think we took a total of 28 x-rays. And essentially we were looking for any kind of projectile or weapon fragments or and what we saw in this case were multiple bones. And there's also a fair amount of what you could tell was debris, which ended up being mud and dirt and rocks. So that's the first thing we did is we took multiple x-rays and then we opened each bag and we went through all of the remains. And like I said yesterday, this took about a week. It took a lot of time, but we were able to separate all the debris in the mud, and we were able to get several bones. There were some organs that were still identified, and also some soft tissues that we were able to identify.
What organs were you able to identify?
So the organs that I identified were the heart, the right and left lung, a portion of the liver, one of the kidneys, small fragments of brain tissue, and a few small segments of bowel. Now, just so you know, all of these tissues were charred, they were blackened, they were shrunken. Some of them were partially burned away. So these weren't intact organs that looked like normal organs. They definitely had fire artifact.
And were you able to identify any portions of her skeletal structure?
Yes. So there was a portion of her skull, and then there were multiple pieces of skull fragments. We found multiple vertebral column, actually the full vertebral column from C1 to C7, so the vertebral bones in your neck, and then also multiple vertebral columns in the thoracic and lumbar region. We identified the sacrum, both hip bones, the sternum, both clavicles. And then as far as the extremities, we identified multiple long bones in both the upper and lower extremities and foot bones as well. And like the organs, these weren't intact, pristine bones. These were bones that were partially burned away, blackened, charred, brittle, with extensive fire artifact.
With the condition that Tylee's body was in, were you able to perform any type of toxicology testing?
Yes.
How did you do that?
So on a portion of the sacrum and the hip bones, I noted that there were still fairly large amounts of skeletal muscle. I could identify it as skeletal muscle. So what I did is I made incisions into the skeletal muscle and I went as deep as I could to find the best possible sample that wasn't blackened and charred. And we sent a sample of skeletal muscle for toxicology testing.
And did you receive any results from that?
Yes.
What were the results of the toxicology testing?
So it came back positive for ibuprofen. So that's just a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. It came back for caffeine. It came back for beta phenethylamine, which is just a decomposition product. It also came back for carbon monoxide, low levels of carbon monoxide, and a very low carboxyhemoglobin saturation level.
And were any of those items found in the toxicology report something you could rely on to determine a cause of death for Tylee?
No, there was nothing in her toxicology report that I felt would explain her death.
Your Honor, I'm going to ask that the witness be handed State's Exhibit 176, 176A through 176MM, as in Mike. He has them, but yeah. And Dr. Warren, if you could just briefly review State's Exhibit 176 and let me know when you've had a chance to briefly review that.
Oh, what are they doing? He's looking over his notes, I guess.
Okay.
Doctor, do you recognize State's Exhibit 176 and its subparts?
Yes.
What does State's Exhibit 176 purport to be?
These are photographs that were taken at the time of JJ's autopsy.
Did you take those photographs?
I personally did not. We have forensic autopsy technicians that take the photographs under my guidance.
So you say they were under your guidance. Were you there when those photographs were taken?
Yes.
Are those photographs a true and accurate representation of what you observed regarding JJ Vallow's autopsy?
Yes.
And would those pictures aid you in discussing and explaining your testimony and findings regarding the autopsy of JJ Vallow?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'd move for that the State's Exhibit 176A through MM be admitted into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Judge.
Okay, exhibits 176A through MM are each admitted into the record.
And Your Honor, if I may publish.
Yes, you can publish those. And I'll note on the record also, these are being published to the jurors and the parties and the witness, but not to the public in general. So you can continue, Mr. Wood, with that.
And I've already set it up. They can't see you, Jack. May we proceed?
Yes, thank you.
Doctor, can you describe what's been marked as State's Exhibit 176A?
No, stop it. Stop.
So this is a photograph of how we received JJ in a black body bag. You can see there's a red seal and also the ruler with the numbers. We do that just to show that this is the case number for the case.
And can you describe what's being shown in 176B?
This is a close-up photograph of the seal or the body lock, number 506559, after it's been cut and removed.
What's the importance of documenting that?
So we want to document that when we receive the body in the body bag and it's sealed, we take a photograph of it to make sure that it's not cut or hampered with in any way. And then we take a photograph showing that we cut it at the time of the autopsy, just for evidence preservation.
And can you describe what the jury sees in 176C?
So this is a photograph. Once the seal was removed, when we opened up the black body bag, JJ was further enclosed within a black tarp with held together with multiple strips of duct tape.
And in 176D, what did you observe?
So this photograph shows we opened up the black tarp that was held together with the duct tape. And this is the first time that I actually saw JJ's body, which you can see, and we talked about briefly yesterday. At the top of the photo, near the top of the head, you can kind of see there's a white plastic bag that's covering his head. And then his face is wrapped with duct tape all the way from the eyes down to the neck. You can also see that his forearms, wrists, and hands are bound with duct tape. There is a blue and white blanket that was accompanying the body that was resting on JJ. And then you can also see he's wearing a red pajama top and red pajama bottom. And I think I mentioned yesterday, really the only part of the skin that was that you can see right here is the upper arms. And they show evidence of decomposition in the form of a green and leathery appearance with some skin slippage.
And what did you observe in 176E?
So this is a photograph, more of a close-up of the upper body, again showing the white plastic bag better. You can see there is a tear near the top of the head in the white plastic bag. So I was informed before I did the autopsy that law enforcement, when they found what they believed to be JJ, they made that small tear to confirm that there was human hair and that there was a human body in the bag. So to my knowledge, that's where that tear came from. But this just better shows the plastic bag over the head and the duct tape covering the face.
And 176F.
And this is a photograph closer up of the lower half of the body. You can see the blue and white blanket, the portion of the red pajama pants, black socks. And then you can also see that JJ's ankles are bound with duct tape as well.
Doctor, what did you observe in 176G?
This is another photograph with the blanket a little down further, so you can get a little better look at the pajama top. I think the main thing here is you can see there's decomposition, or the pajama top was soaked with decomposition fluid, and there was mold on the shirt. And then you can see also there's a fair amount of dirt and other debris on the duct tape around the face.
And 176H.
This is a very similar photograph, just with the blanket removed, better seeing the forearms and hands that are duct taped together, and also just getting a view on the different side of the body.
When these photographs are taken, do they attempt to take multiple angles?
That's correct.
Why is that?
Just so we get the full picture. We have a routine where we take photographs on both sides of the body, the front of the body, the back of the body, just to make sure that we're capturing all angles of the body.
Doctor, what did you observe in 176I?
Again, this is a photograph of the blanket removed, better showing the pajama pants, which were also partially soaked with decomposition fluid. And you can see there's some white moldy substance on near the right knee or the right thigh.
And 176J.
This is a photograph better showing the ankles that were bound with duct tape.
Doctor, if you can describe what was
Oh
happening
my
in
God.
176K.
So what we did to remove the plastic bag and the duct tape is we made one single cut along the side of the face and carefully removed it, exposing JJ's face. So you can see JJ's face, at least a portion of his face, has green decomposition discoloration. And then there's
So glad we
also a
can't see
strip of
this.
duct tape that is covering JJ's mouth. that essentially runs from jawline to jawline.
Can you describe 176L or what you observed there?
So after we made the single cut and removed the white plastic bag with the duct tape off of the head, we took a photograph of it, and this is from the inside out. So what would be the portion that was covering JJ's face on the inside. And what you can see here is there's a fair amount of fluid, decomposition fluid, and some dirt and other debris within there.
And to be clear, that was the bag that was wrapped around his head.
Correct.
Can you describe what you saw in 176M?
This is a photograph of JJ's head after the bag has been removed. And it better shows the strip of duct tape that is covering his mouth.
And what do you see in 176N?
This is the strip of duct tape that's been removed from his mouth. We photographed it, and then we submitted to law enforcement. All of these things on JJ, all the duct tape and the bag on the head, that was all sealed and submitted to law enforcement.
Doctor, if you can describe what you observed in 176O.
Again, this is a photograph of JJ's forearms and wrists and hands being bound with multiple layers of duct tape.
And 176Q.
So similar to the bag on the head and the duct tape on the head, we made a single cut along the duct tape. And what this does is it exposes the forearms, which show evidence of decomposition. And it also reveals that JJ's wrists were further bound with additional duct tape.
And doctor, I'd normally ask you to point that out with a pointer on the screen where we don't have the screen. Is this where my pen is pointing the additional duct tape you were speaking of?
Yes.
You can tell the jury what you saw in 176R.
So this is the duct tape that was wrapped around JJ's forearms and wrists and hands. It's been removed. We take a photograph of it, and then we submit it to law enforcement.
And was that when that was removed? Can you describe how that was removed?
Yeah, similar to the bag and the duct tape around the face and the head. We made a single cut and then carefully removed it.
And 176S, what was that?
So this is just a photograph of the same thing, but this is showing the inside of the duct tape that was touching JJ's skin. And you can see there's a significant amount of decomposition fluid and staining on the inside.
And if you can describe what you saw in 176P.
So this is a close-up of the duct tape around JJ's wrists. So after we removed the multiple wraps of duct tape around his arms and his wrists and his hands, there was an additional duct tape that was binding his wrists together.
And doctor, if I can ask, again, without a pointer, is this the duct tape, the additional duct tape around his wrists?
Correct.
And then is this material on the side, is that the outer layer of duct tape?
That's correct.
And what is shown in 176T?
So similar to the other duct tape, we removed this duct tape, we made a single cut, we laid it out, took a photograph of it, and submitted it to law enforcement. You can see on this duct tape, there's also decomposition, staining, and some dirt and other debris on the duct tape.
And 176U.
This is the duct tape that's been removed, again, just flipped over. So this is on the outside.
What did you observe in States Exhibit 176V?
This was the disposable diaper that JJ was wearing. And you can see on the right side, it's white. And then on the left side, it's stained with decomposition fluid. And that's why it has a darker appearance to it.
Detective, can you describe what you see in States Exhibit 176X?
This is a photograph of JJ's face after everything has been removed. The duct tape, just to get a photograph of his face with everything removed.
Can you describe what you see in 176Y?
This is a photograph of JJ's face, chest, abdomen, external genitalia, and his upper extremities. This essentially is showing the extent of the decomposition of JJ. You can see there's green discoloration in some areas, especially the face. The chest and abdomen show areas of green discoloration in a tan brown leathery appearance. There's also evidence of skin slippage. And then there's also some small white mold formation on the body as well.
And Dr., skin slippage is probably self-explanatory, but just for purposes of the record and for the jury, can you explain what you mean when you say skin slippage?
So during the decomposition process, the skin starts breaking down and it starts sloughing away. So those patches on his chest and his abdomen, those are areas where the skin is starting to slip away.
And do you notice a difference on the forearms in this picture?
Yes. So you can see the forearms do look different. There's a well demarcated line that starts at about the elbow. And the reason it looks different is that's where the duct tape was wrapped around his forearms.
And if you can describe what you see in 176AA.
This is a photograph of JJ's lower body, again showing the decomposition changes involving very similar to the upper body, but on the lower extremities as well, with green and tan brown skin discoloration and skin slippage.
Can you describe what you see in 176BB?
This is a photograph of JJ's back. We do this on all of our cases, just so we get good documentation photograph of the back of the head and the neck and the back. And this is simply showing very similar decomposition changes, which predominantly in the back was diffuse green skin discoloration. There was skin slippage on the back as well and on the buttocks.
Can you describe what you see in 176CC?
This is a photograph of JJ laying face down and now looking at the lower extremities. Again, just showing the decomposition changes, the lower extremities. And you can see there's extensive skin slippage and partial degloving or skin slippage of the feet.
Doctor, if you can describe what you see in 176DD.
So this is a photograph of JJ's right upper arm. And during this autopsy, I was essentially, like we talked about during the external examination, I was looking for any evidence of natural disease or any evidence of trauma that could help explain why JJ may have died. So this jumped out to me. This was a bruising on the lateral right upper arm, or at least what appeared to be bruising to my eye.
And did you do any further tests to verify that bruising?
Yes. So I briefly discussed it yesterday, but decomposition can cause areas to look like bruising. So to confirm that it was, I made multiple incisions and I looked for hemorrhage in the subcutaneous tissue to confirm that it was true bruising. In addition to that, I did take sections of the areas and looked at it under the microscope as well, to looking for hemorrhage in the tissues.
States Exhibit 176E.
So this is a close-up photograph of the bruise that I just described on the right upper arm.
And States Exhibit 176FF. What was happening there?
So this is the bruising on the right upper arm, and I've made an incision, and I'm looking for hemorrhage in the subcutaneous tissue. And if you can see, I'm holding it up with the forceps to show that there is hemorrhage in the subcutaneous tissue.
Again, without the benefit of a pointer, is this the area you're referring to? And where that color appears to be darker, is that what you're referring to?
That's correct.
And so did that lead you to a conclusion as to the bruising?
That led me to believe that that was true bruising, and it wasn't just artifactual bruising or from the decomposition process.
What did you observe in States Exhibit 176GG?
So this is a photograph of JJ when he's face down, and this is a photograph of the left upper arm. And there was an area of concern for bruising on the left upper arm as well.
And again, without the benefit of a pointer, I'll use my pen. Is this the area you're referring to?
Yes.
What did you observe in 176HH?
So similar to the right arm, I made an incision into that area on the left arm looking for subcutaneous hemorrhage. You can see there is focal hemorrhage in the subcutaneous tissue. It's located near the bottom left portion of the incision.
And did that lead you to any conclusions about, and just to be clear, is this the area you're speaking of?
Yes.
Did that lead you to any conclusions about the nature of that, those markings?
Yes, again, I believe that it was true bruising.
Can you describe what you observed in 176I?
This is a photograph of JJ's right hand. One, you can say there's extensive skin slippage and partial begloving of the skin. And then also what jumped out to me, you can see the right thumb. I believe we discussed it yesterday, the right subungual hemorrhage. So you can see his right thumbnail shows diffuse bright red hemorrhage.
We spoke yesterday about type of force necessary to cause something like that, correct?
Correct.
And just because it was yesterday, if you could just briefly remind the jury of your testimony on that matter.
Yeah, so in order to get something like that, there has to be some kind of trauma or some kind of force to that area. And I think yesterday I gave the example of, you slam your finger in the door, you're going to get that subungual hemorrhage. Not saying that's what happened, but you have to have some kind of force impacting that area to get hemorrhage like that.
You can describe what you saw in 176JJ.
This is a photograph of JJ's left lower extremity near his ankles, upper shin area. I believe I touched on it yesterday that there were some areas that looked concerning for bruising after we removed the duct tape from his ankles. So this is the area I was talking about. you can see the skin for the most part is light green discoloration. And then the area, there is a focal area that has a very dark appearance to it. So to the naked eye, I thought that this very well could represent bruising.
And did you do any follow-up testing on that?
Yes, I did the same thing that I did with the upper arms. I made multiple incisions.
And did you, what were your findings?
I did not see any subcutaneous hemorrhage in the tissues on either the left ankle or the right ankle.
Doctor, if you can describe what you observed in States Exhibit 176 LL.
So this is a photograph of JJ's neck. Specifically, it's the left side of his neck. You can see on the upper portion of the photograph is his left ear. And there is a collection of brown to dark brown to red scratch-like abrasions, some of them with dark red hemorrhage that involve the left side of the neck and near the left angle of the jaw.
In States Exhibit 176 MM. Is that the same thing?
Yes, this is a close-up. Again, you can see the vast majority of the skin has this faint green skin discoloration, and then there's a fairly large collection of linear and irregular light brown to dark brown to red scratch-like abrasions on the neck and angle of the jaw.
Why was that of note to you?
Well, in any case, and especially a case like this, you want to simply document every injury that you find. So that's important. Also, at least in my experience, they look like scratch-like abrasions. So it's important in this case, considering there's a white plastic bag over his head. Are these scratch-like abrasions from the individual putting the plastic bag over his head?
Judge, I'm going to object at this point. Calls for speculation.
Your Honor, I don't think he's speculating. He's talking about different methods by which those abrasions could occur.
It's overruled.
It could also be from JJ himself trying to get the bag off of his head. I wasn't there. I don't know. But these are the types of things that go through my head and the possibilities.
Thank you. And again, doctor, just because we had a bit of time between yesterday and today, based on your opinion, what was the cause of death of JJ Vallow?
I determined the cause to be asphyxia by plastic bag over the head and duct tape covering the mouth.
Your Honor, I'd ask that the witness now be shown what's been marked as States Exhibit 177A through EE.
What is going on? Well, thank you very much, Glowing Meadows. Good morning, Sicilian. Good afternoon, where you're at. It's only morning here for a few more minutes anyway. Yeah, he does. I agree, Gerri. Yeah. Gosh. Hey, Queen.
Doctor, if you can quickly, or just take your time, I guess, and review those and let me know when you've had a chance to review them.
Yikes.
Okay.
I don't know how Chad sits there. I am feeling a little bit better. Thank you, Sicilian. Just a yucky tummy. Oh God, Gerri, that's funny.
Okay.
Do you recognize what's been marked as States Exhibit 177 and its subparts?
Yes.
What do they purport to be?
These are photographs that were taken during Ty Lee's autopsy.
And were you present when those photographs were taken?
Yes.
Are they true and accurate representations of what you observed during that autopsy?
Yes.
And would those photographs aid you in explaining your testimony and your findings to the jury?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'd ask for the admission of States Exhibit 177A through 177E into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection from the defense, Judge.
All right. Exhibits 177A through EE are all admitted.
And may I publish?
At this point, Mr. Wood, I'm going to have a break
Okay.
and we'll take about a 15 to 20-minute recess at this time. We'll come back on and then you can publish.
All right.
Yeah, he did. I would agree. I can hear candy being thrown all over the floor.
E. And Mr. Wood, if you'd like to continue with direct at this time, you may.
Thank you, and may I publish?
You may.
I got to get in there.
While you're getting ready to publish those, Mr. Wood, I will note that these are, again, not being shown on the live stream or to the public. They are being shown to the jurors and the parties. And in addition, if there are any victims entitled to view these exhibits, then the court will arrange that for a private time when those victims are able to also view the evidence if that's requested. So if there is any request through either the prosecutor's office or directly to the court, let us know and we'll arrange that.
Thank you. Doctor, what did you observe in States Exhibit 177A?
So as I mentioned earlier, Ty Lee was received in multiple bags. This is a photograph of one of the bags. It's sealed with a red body lock. And then on the outside of the bag, you can see handwritten in silver marker, 1 of 3. So this is one of the bags that was received.
What did you observe in 177B?
This is an intact seal of bag 1 of 3.
And again, what's the importance of documenting the seal?
Again, it's evidence preservation. When the bag comes, we want to know that the body lock is intact, and we want to be the ones who open up the body lock.
What did you observe in 177C?
So after we removed the body lock, we opened up the body bag, and there were a number of items within the black body bag. There were 2 additional brown paper bags that you can see here. One is unlabeled and one is labeled with burial site ?
And 177D?
So this is within the same body bag. You can see the 2 paper bags that I just described on the right side. And then on the left side within the body bag are multiple collections of soft tissue, bone, and debris, including dirt and rock.
Is this the area you're speaking of?
Yes.
If you can describe what you observed in 177E?
So after we've gone through all of the remains in those piles that were presented to us on the left side. We cleaned those up and we removed the mud and the dirt and the debris. And what you can see is what is left. What we found was multiple vertebral columns.
Are these those?
Yes. Loops of small bowel that are on the far left of the blue board. And then also small pieces of cartilage and bone that are on the far right of the blue board. And then off to the right, off of the blue board, you can see there's 3 distinct large pieces of bone. So one of those is the right pelvis with attached portion of the right femur. One of them is the left pelvis with attached portion of the left femur. And one of them is the sacrum.
Can you just define for the jury what the sacrum is?
So the sacrum essentially is a bone at the just at the end of your lower back, and that's where the right and the left pelvic bones associate with. So it's part of your pelvis.
Can you tell the jury what you observed in 177F?
So this is essentially bag 1 of 3. It's labeled. You can see this is everything else that remains after we sifted through and found the bones. This is all of the dirt and mud and rocks that remained.
And 177G.
So if you remember, within the black body bag, there were 2 brown body bags. One of them was burial site. So this was what was in that bag to the right. It came in a tinfoil container, and there were multiple small collections of bones and charred bones and other debris.
And what did you observe in 177H?
So the last photograph that you just saw, so this is after sifting through that and cleaning things up, this is what we found. So again, there were 2 charred vertebral column bones on the far left. There were, and then numerous small charred blackened or white bones that really were unrecognizable. They were too small and they were too much fire artifact to tell what kind of bone they were.
And what did you observe in 177I?
So this is the second black body bag that we received. You can see on the far left, it's actually labeled 2 of 3 suspected female.
And 177J.
Again, this is a body lock or a sill that's intact. Again, we always take photographs of this to make sure it's intact for evidence preservation.
And 177K.
This is just a better photograph showing how it was labeled, the 2 of 3 suspected female.
Can you describe what you observed in 177M?
So when we opened up the body bag, this is what we saw. One thing that stands out immediately, at least to us, was there was a green plastic material that's located centrally within the debris and the skeletal remains.
Doctor, not to interrupt you, I'm sorry. Again, without the benefit of a laser pointer, is this where you're referring to the green?
Yes. And when we were able to pull that out and clean it, it was a melted green bucket. And then the rest of what you see is a collection of human remains, including bones, soft tissue. The organs were found in this bag as well.
One 1770, what did you observe there?
So similar to bag 1 of 3, in addition to the human remains that were in the bag, there were 2 additional bags within the body bag. One was a brown paper bag on the far left, and the other was a clear plastic bag that contained a brown paper bag with human remains in it.
Doctor, what did you observe in 177P?
So this is a photograph of the largest portions of the skull that we found in the top. That top piece, that is the frontal bone and portion of the orbits. On the left side is a large piece of skull bone. Obviously, both of them are blackened and charred and crumbly. And then the bottom is a portion of the mandible and maxilla, and you can still make out some teeth. They're partially charred, and there's blackened material partially covering them.
Are you aware if any attempts were made during the autopsy to identify these remains through teeth and dental?
Yes, we had a forensic odontologist come to our office on the day of the autopsy to try and identify tidily via dental comparison of antemortem records that we requested, that were requested, and the postmortem dental x-rays.
Was that conclusive?
Yes, the forensic odontologist was able to make a positive identification based on dental x-rays.
Detective, can you identify what you saw in 177Q?
So as I stated, within bag 2 of 3, that was the bag where the organs were found that were identifiable. This is a photograph of the heart, which is right in the middle, and then the 2 lungs, which are on the right left side. It's difficult to identify them. This isn't what heart and lungs typically look like. They're obviously charred. Portions of them are burned away and significantly shrunken as well.
Hello, Cindy. Hello, Colin.
Gerri, again, without a laser pointer, are these areas the lungs?
Correct.
And this portion is the heart, correct?
Yes.
Do you recall about the size that was when you received it?
They were very small. My best estimate would be they're probably a quarter of the size that they typically are.
And if you can identify what you observed in 177S?
So in all cases, even if the organs are charred and shrunken, and we still examine them. So these are essentially sections that I've taken of the heart and lungs, and they've been laid out.
If you can identify what you observed in 177T?
So as I mentioned earlier, heart and both lungs were found, and we also found 1 kidney. So this is one of the kidneys, and you can see it's blackened and charred, and some of it has been burned away.
I am a little bit better today, Cindy. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know, Gerri. I don't want to hear it at
You can
all.
explain for the jury what was happening during 177V.
I definitely
So
don't
in
want to
bag
feel it.
2 of 3, if you remember, there was that large collection of human remains. So after we clean them off and clean off the dirt and all the other debris, this is what we found. So in bag number 2, I already stated a lot of the bones that we found, but in bag number 2, we found most of the skull bones, most of the vertebral column, the sternum, portions of ribs. We also found the clavicles, as well as multiple long bones from the upper and lower extremities, and some foot bones as well. Now, again, these were not intact, pretty looking bones.
I hope they don't.
Partially burned away. They were
I hope
crumbly.
they don't feel anything or.
But this is what we essentially found after we cleaned everything up.
And if you can describe what you saw in 177X?
Yeah, so this is within bag number 2. This is one of the additional brown paper bags found within the body bag. And you can see there's multiple charred small pieces of bone. Some of them appear to be foot bones, and some of them are unidentifiable.
You can identify when what you observe in 177Z.
So this was bag 3 of 3 that we received in a brown paper bag, and is labeled remains of suspected female.
And 177AA.
So within that large paper bag, there are 5 additional smaller brown paper bags that were sealed and labeled. Each of these smaller brown paper bags contained small fragments of charred bone.
And 177BB.
So again, this
I
is
agree.
one of the 5 additional brown paper
Thank you,
bags
Cindy. I love you
Um,
too.
that contained multiple fragments of
He
small charred
understands the
bone.
memo.
Are you able
I
to
think
tell?
so.
It might be a little blurry through the ammo what that bag is
This
labeled.
is so gross.
It's labeled fire pit -B north. I can't make out the end of that. And then date 06/09/2020.
And just again, what were the contents of that bag?
They were multiple small fragments of charred, crumbly bone.
What did you observe in 177CC?
So this is the 3rd brown paper bag that was received within the larger paper bag. Again, it was sealed with tape and it was labeled. And the contents of this were again small fragments of charred, crumbly bone.
And 177DD.
This is the 4th bag that was received within the larger bag. Again, it's taped and labeled, and the contents of this also consisted of multiple small charred, crumbly bone.
And lastly, 177EE.
And this is the 5th bag that was received within the larger brown paper bag, also taped and labeled, and also containing, I believe, soft tissue and charred, crumbly bone.
Doctor, upon completion of your autopsy of Tylee Ryan, what did you do, or did your lab do with her remains?
So after we collected and cleaned the bony remains, we sent all of the bones to the FBI for a detailed forensic anthropology report. We had them analyze it and produce a report.
Right. And did you review that report?
I did.
Okay. And did that report take any part in your findings or decision regarding Tylee Ryan's cause of death?
I think every information, I took into account. The report on this came back as they noted, and we noted also before, that there were sharp force markings on the bones, but they really detailed and took photographs of sharp force markings that were found on the sacrum and also on the right and left pelvic bone. So yes, it did play a role in, I did not sign out the case or come to my conclusion until I had all the information back.
Okay. And you did already answer this question yesterday, but because of the time, I would just ask you again, based on your autopsy, and your training and education, what was your opinion concerning the cause of death of Tylee Ryan?
I determined the cause of death to be homicide by unspecified means.
Thank you. And just for purposes of clarity, can you remind the jury the criteria for a homicide by unspecified means?
Yes. So as we talked about yesterday, there's guidelines and criteria to go over briefly, just to remind you. One, it has to be objectively suspicious findings. So some of the examples they give is that the body is hidden out of plain view, say in a trunk of a car or in a forest and covered by branches or buried in the ground. Another example is that evidence was evidence was concealed, right? So they were lit on fire, they were dismembered, bleach was poured on them, something of that nature. So for criteria number one, this case clearly falls into that, fitting both of those criteria. For number two, it's the autopsy doesn't show an obvious cause of death or a better explanation for the cause of death. And the two examples they give there is one, you have an intact body, you're able to examine it, look at all the organs, and you can't come up with the cause of death. The other example is that there's not enough of the body there for you to determine what the cause of death is. So Tylee would fit under that category. The third criteria is toxicology. That toxicology cannot explain why the decedent is dead. In this case, there was nothing in Tylee's toxicology where I felt I could explain her death. And then the fourth criteria is more based on history and some of the circumstances surrounding the death, the medical records. And we went over Tylee's medical records yesterday, and I didn't think there was a good explanation why otherwise young, healthy teenager would be dead. So those are the guidelines and the criteria I used to come to my conclusion.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this point, I have no further questions.
All right, before you step away from the podium there, Mr. Wood, I do just want to note on the record the exhibits that were admitted. We referenced them as 176A through MM and 177A through EE. And I will note there are certain portions that are not included in. I guess what I'm saying is there are some missing letters within the sub exhibits in what I'm seeing with my courtesy copies.
Your Honor, we initially had more pictures and then limited what we were going to show to the jury based on what needed to be shown to explain the testimony.
Okay, so this might be tedious for a moment, but in order to keep the record clear, I'd like to go just read individually those and make sure they track with the state's actual exhibits so that we do have the record of what was admitted on those. So starting with 176, we've got A, 176B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, X, Y. Then we've got 176B, B, C, C, D, D, E, E, F, F, G, G, H, H, I, J, J, L, L, and M, M.
Your Honor, is that the court's courtesy copy or the exhibit copy?
That's the court's courtesy copy.
Okay. Did the court have 176AA?
We do have AA. I may have misread that. So AA is also in there.
And it sounded like there was one missing, BB.
BB is there also.
Okay.
On 177, maybe it'd be easier to just say I had A through EE, and the ones I saw were not included. If you went alphabetically, would be there was no L, R, U, W, or Y? N. Oh. And also no N.
That tracks with the copy I have, Your Honor. And again, there were some photographs that we deemed unnecessary to put on, but they'd already been marked.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify so that neither the jurors nor somebody looking at the record was wondering where those were. They were not included or admitted. So thanks for addressing that. That will conclude then the direct examination of Dr. Warren. Mr. Pryor, once you're ready, you can go to the podium and conduct cross-examination.
Good luck with
Good
that.
morning, Dr. Warren.
Good morning.
Yeah, let's
As
see.
part of your review of the anthropology report, did you note that there were some canine bites of any time on any parts of the remains of Tylee?
I did not notice that on my examination, but I'd probably leave that up to the anthropologist.
Now, you talked previously about bruising and that you do a cut to determine whether or not it was actual bruise or not an actual bruise. But isn't it true there's really no way to determine on any bruise when the bruise occurred, is there?
It's difficult to get exact timing on a bruise. That is true. They've even done studies where they've looked at it under the microscope and try to, really pinpoint the time frame. And it is difficult. Some of the things you can look at are color of the bruise. So typically a fresh bruise is going to be blue, red, purple. As it gets older, it's going to turn brown, green, yellow. And then under the microscope, it usually takes several minutes for inflammation to come in. So if you take a section under the microscope and there's no inflammation, you can presumably say that it was fairly recent before the death. But yes, it is difficult to time bruises and abrasions postmortem.
So if some time had passed, and let's even say that some time had passed, and it was a situation where there was embalming fluid put in the body, and a significant amount of time had passed on bruising, would it be fair to say that at that point there'd be no way to determine what kind of bruising or how to date those bruisings?
Again, as I stated before, it's difficult to get an exact time of a bruise. You can give a time frame. I mean, there's definitely a difference between a fresh bruise and a bruise that's a week old, right? By the look at it under the microscope. In this particular case, on the arms, I took sections of the bruising and looked under the microscope, and what I saw was hemorrhage and no inflammation.
Okay.
So to me, what that means is that it was, probably right around close to around the time that JJ passed away, because you do need some time for inflammation to come in. But I did not see that on JJ.
Okay.
And Dr. Warren, would you maybe just pull that microphone down about 2 or 3 inches downwards? If it's more under your mouth, I think it picks it up better.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's fine. Thank you.
But again, in general, when you're talking about bruising, one of the immediate ways to determine the age of a bruise is that if, let's say, a bruise was brown or brownish greenish, that would seem to suggest, at least generally, that was an older bruise. Would that be fair?
That's correct.
Okay. And even if you dug into that bruise and you saw that there was hemorrhaging, that doesn't necessarily give you the ability to determine when that bruise was placed on the
He's
body
trying
or
to talk
occurred.
about
Is that fair?
Tammy. He is.
I think it's fair to say it's difficult to the
Exactly.
exact time of the bruise. It's more of a
That's what
range.
he's doing. I
Now
can't
you,
believe they're letting him do this.
Spoke about
The second he said embalming, I already knew what he was fucking doing. Oh my
examining
God.
Kylie's medical records, and you were able to determine that she was a healthy young
They
girl
better.
at the time that this occurred.
They need to tell him no.
And she was approximately how tall? Do you
Oh my
recall?
God.
Well, I was unable to get a
Maze.
height at my examination
I can't believe this guy.
because of the condition of the body.
But in looking at the medical records, were you able to obtain that information?
I don't remember off the top of my head how tall Tylee was.
Okay. Okay.
They didn't get to be embalmed.
Now,
They didn't get to be treated like,
Your examination
Any
cannot make a
respect
determination
whatsoever.
as to when
I can't
the
believe it
remains
either.
were put in the ground. Is that fair?
Nobody fucking objected
Yes,
to that.
that's correct.
And even in spite of
Wow.
the anthropologist report and your examination, the fragments that you found in the fire pit, you can't make a determination as to whether or not those were animal or human fragments in the fire pit. Is that right?
I'm not a forensic anthropologist, so
Okay.
I can't. I would not feel comfortable doing that.
Okay.
But that's the whole reason why I sent it to a specialist, a forensic anthropologist.
Okay.
So I think that's a better question for the forensic anthropologist.
And we should rely on a forensic anthropologist to make that determination. Would that be fair?
Yes,
Along with potential DNA evidence?
I think DNA specialists
Okay.
should make determination on DNA.
Do you have a recollection of when the date of these 2 autopsies took place? Specific date?
Yes. So June 11th, 2020.
And the one you said took over a week, so that would have extended on through the 17th or 18th.
That's correct.
There is a term called heavy lungs. Do you recognize that term?
Heavy lungs is sometimes a term used when there's pulmonary edema. So pulmonary edema is when there's an excess amount of fluid in the lungs. You can get pulmonary edema for a wide variety of reasons. For instance, you can get it in congestive heart failure. Your heart isn't pumping as well as it should. Everything kind of backs up, fluid leaks into the lungs. You get heavy lungs, you get pulmonary edema.
And as a matter of record, you can get that pulmonary edema from the heart not operating properly. And for all practical purposes, the heart could look perfectly normal. Isn't that correct?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. There was no testimony earlier about heavy lungs. This is beyond the scope of Dr. Warren's testimony.
Sustained.
Uh-oh, canine. Sorry to hear that. Yep, give him love from his YouTube family.
Would you agree with me that the remains that were presented to you were significantly smaller than the remains of Tylee had she been alive at that time?
Right, I
Again,
can't. I
I
can't.
think that's
decide.
probably a better question for the forensic anthropologist.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's safe to say that I can say that we received Tylee and she was dismembered in multiple parts. So obviously, yes.
Yes, I can't believe he's
it's gonna
doing
be
this.
shorter than if she was intact, but what that means, or I'm not sure. I think I'd rather leave that question to a forensic anthropologist.
And from your examination, the vital organs were significantly smaller than what they would have been of a normal breathing human being, correct?
That's correct. That's very common.
A normal breathing human being, one that's
fire-related
alive,
deaths, and
you
the
mean?
organs get
Oh
charred,
my
they
God.
shrink, and they lose weight.
Judge, I don't think I have anything else. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Any redirect from the state?
Just very briefly, Your Honor. Doctor, you were asked about the dating of bruises.
Yes.
Can bruising be considered a form of trauma?
Yes.
And in a situation in which you viewed the remains of J.J. Vallow, would you be surprised to find bruising on that body?
I think any bruising or any injuries in a case like this is very significant.
That's it, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. That'll conclude then testimony of Dr. Warren. We'll make sure the exhibits are given to the clerk here. And is Dr. Warren going to be recalled, do you think, at any point by the state?
Your Honor, it's not likely. I guess it's possible in rebuttal, but so I guess the state would just keep him under subpoena for the time being.
Okay, so Dr. Warren, since you're under subpoena, there's an exclusionary order prohibiting you from viewing testimony. This case is available to see streamed live or here in the courtroom, so please don't do anything to view any testimony in case you are recalled or until you are advised you've been released from any subpoena in the court. Thank you for your testimony. Go ahead and step down.
All right, thank you.
Your Honor, if I may, I believe there are certain portions of testimony Dr. Warren would be allowed to watch if they were presented.
Okay,
Judge, could we
can clear that up later.
yeah,
could we have a sidebar on this?
Yeah, and I'll just, before we have sidebar, point out that's a proper argument Mr. Woods brought up, that the exclusionary order does not necessarily apply at times in certain aspects to what are considered expert witnesses. So you can go ahead and step down. We'll have a sidebar and then you can call the next witness, the state. And who will the next witness be?
Your Honor, the state needed just a moment with regards to the next witness as well and was actually going to ask for a sidebar.
Okay, let's have that sidebar.
Wow, I don't know about anybody else. I feel so angry about that. That nobody said, hello, what are you talking about? You know, I'm surprised he didn't ask that doctor about fucking Melanie Gibb. He keeps doing shit like that. Every single person that comes on there, he wants to talk about Melanie Gibb. And then every single solitary person is, do you understand that Chad is not being charged with Charles' death? Yeah, everybody understands that. You know what? People who, not everybody that walks in there to, oh my God, Jack, I hear you. I hear you. You know, people that are in there to talk about something specific, why would they fucking know Melanie Gibb? This nonsense of his. Oh my God. I know. Exactly. The 7 gatherers. Wow. Wow. He's just really trying hard to make Lori have her own cult without, oh, fucking panty waist man tits over there. Oh my God. I cannot with him. Exactly. Exactly right. Yep, Gerri, that's exactly right. Yep. He hightailed his ass right down here and stayed at that house, didn't he? Yeah, sure the hell did. I know. Oh my God. Oh, you kill me, Gerri. Oh my God. Oh shit, you're too funny. Oh Lord. Oh Lordy, that's good. Right? Twats. Oh my God. Oh Lord. Oh my God. Pryor's getting by with bullshit. So Gerri just made it funny. He's trying really hard to, he asked every single person certain things that they know, they don't know anything about. They're not there about that. Nothing like it. But he has to ask every single person about it. And it's so annoying. Yeah. What does he call him? The 7, what? Shit, now I can't. See, now all I can think is 7 twats too. Oh my Lord. Wow. Yep, they're definitely twats, but my God, he's just trying to make everybody act like they know it. Gatherers, right. Yeah, after you said twats, I couldn't come up with the right word. God. That organ, I know. He acts like everybody knows who it is. Double story, not. No, see, that's where he's wrong. He's gone way out on a limb with that no upstairs. And it's not true. There is an upstairs. There is. It originally was a single story, and I don't think they're able to, the add-on I don't know if they were able to list that in a listing, but there is an addition on there, and there are bedrooms, and there is electric. I don't know what his fucking hair up his ass is about that. Yes, there is an addition that has, yes, it is. Yep. And up in the loft,
All right, we had a
So-
sidebar. There's an exhibit that the state's
When
going to be
he bought
proposing
it,
with the next witness, and
there
the
is,
exhibit is in electronic format. And counsel for defense does need an
when
opportunity
he
to
and
review
Tammy
the
bought
exhibit
it, the
because
listing
apparently it's had
shows
some
that
modifications
loft
since it was
having
first
bed-
reviewed by defense
you know,
counsel.
they're using it as a
Because of the nature
bedroom.
of the exhibit, what we discussed, just the most simple way to take care
And
of that
there,
is we are going to have another break at
There
this
are,
time to clear the
uh,
courtroom so that defense counsel can review
outlets.
the exhibit in preparation for its being proffered.
I know he
And
does,
so
and
we'll take a break to
but
take up
he's
this
the one been
evidentiary
got.
issue, and then we'll come back on with the calling of the next witness.
Sis, did you hear whenever that one guy said, I don't know, it's your house? Whoop. Cut that shit right off right now. And yesterday or the other day, the judge told him to stop talking over the top of everybody, including him. No, that house looks like. See, that's what is so ridiculous. He had to have that house. He had to be right there because that was the property he needed for what he needed to do. Oh, but lo and behold, all of a sudden he could run the 144,000 from Hawaii, huh? Yeah, whatever. I would think he would be because it doesn't look like anything I would want to live. The washer and dryer is right inside the kitchen. It is. It's really weird. Tammy didn't want that house. She went along with all of his ridiculous nonsense. Just so he could kill her. I mean, what? Oh my God. Okay, so they went to lunch or something? What happened?
Okay, we're back on the record on KCR 22-21-1623, State of Idaho versus Chad Daybell. The state's getting prepared to call its next witness. Because I will likely forget to mention this before we call the witness, just a scheduling matter, I'd like to advise the court, everyone here and the jurors as well. Tomorrow, there are some courthouse renovations taking place that are probably going to be pretty distracting when that happens. So we've had a request to stop trial tomorrow at 2:00. So we'll talk about a schedule, possibly.
Yeah, you're right.
Lunch tomorrow,
It does.
going through, but we'll need to conclude by 2 tomorrow. So
Yeah.
that will be the schedule, and then we'll have likely another
Yep, Gerri.
just normal day
Totally.
on Friday. So apologies for doing that at a strange time. And again, I
Right,
don't think I'll
Frowsy,
remember to do
that's
that
it.
otherwise. At this time, the state, I believe, Ms. Blake, you're going to be directing the next witness. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
Go ahead and call your witness,
Being
please.
part of
The
it.
state will call Detective Werther.
It's very true. Oh, this might be the guy from Chandler.
Always swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Right. Yep, he needs to just stop. He acts like he can just pull anybody off the street and ask him about fucking Melanie Gibb. What the hell?
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, I'll note Detective Werther's now been placed under oath. I do have a couple of questions before we commence. Detective Werther, have you listened in on online or in person here any of the trial testimony that's taken place since this case started?
I have not.
Have you talked to anyone else about testimony they've provided in this trial?
I spoke to Detective Duncan. I'm aware that he did testify, but we didn't discuss the content of his testimony.
Okay. All right, Ms. Blake, then you may proceed with your direct.
Thank you, Your Honor. Will you please state your name again and spell it for the record?
Yes. My name is Ariel Werther. Ariel spelled A-R-I-E-L. Werther spelled W-E-R-T-H-E-R. My badge number is 649, and I work for the Chandler Police Department.
What is your current title or position within the Chandler Police Department?
The title is detective. I'm assigned to the robbery homicide unit of the Chandler Police Department.
Do you have any specialized training in order to be a law enforcement officer in general?
Yes, I attended the Arizona Law Enforcement Academy 2011. Prior to that, I worked as a dispatcher for the department for 3 years. And then since that time, I've engaged in ongoing training as required by AZ Post, which is the outfit that determines if a person is and can remain a sworn law enforcement officer in Arizona. I've also sought additional specialized training for the various units that I've worked in, including training relevant to what I'm testifying here today.
And you just talked about some of them, but have you held various assignments or positions within the Chandler Police Department?
I have. So initially, I began, as I mentioned, as a police dispatcher with a civilian position, answering 911, dispatching police officers, things like that. I was in 2008. In 2011, I transitioned and became a sworn law enforcement officer, went to the academy. I worked on patrol for a total of 5 years. During 2 of those years, I was a field training officer, which would be a person who trains new officers in the job in the field. And then I transitioned to working as a detective for the Special Victims Unit, investigating primarily sex crimes and family violence cases. And then that was in 2016. In 2020, I transitioned to working for the Robbery Homicide Unit, and I've been there since.
And then you referenced some training regarding what you're testifying to today. Can you tell me a little bit about what that training was or is?
I've attended multiple training events regarding the interpretation of cell phone records specifically, including 2 40-hour courses, one of which I attended earlier this year. And that provides training and guidance and practical experience, including projects that one works on in the class, in order to properly interpret data received from cell phone service providers. And then I've also had training on interpreting data extracted from mobile devices.
So focusing on that training with the cell phones, can you explain how a cell phone communicates with cell towers?
A mobile device on a cellular network would typically be serviced by a particular provider. That provider has a network of base stations or cell towers. We've all seen them as we move throughout the city and other places. Those have radio frequency antenna mounted to them that angle in particular directions and broadcast and receive signals that keep your mobile device communicating with the network. And typically, if you are moving about, it may be the case that your device may begin connected to a particular cell tower, but then do what's known as a handoff and transition to a different cellular tower on the same network in order to provide what feels to us like an uninterrupted experience as it moves from one tower to the next.
And do you use call detail records to get information about a cell phone as well?
We do.
What is a call detail record?
Call detail records is a generic term for the records maintained by your cellular service provider that they maintain for their own purposes, for business purposes, and that log things such as when a particular mobile device connected to a tower, for what purpose. If it's a voice call, typically it'll say, the length of that call. And if it's text message, it'll typically tell you things such as whether that's an incoming or an outgoing text message and what other phone numbers were involved in that communication.
How does law enforcement obtain call detail records?
Typically via a search warrant based upon probable cause and authorized by a judge, which is then served to the cellular service provider, and then they will produce the records ordered by that judge.
Were you working in Chandler, Arizona on July 11th of 2019?
I was.
Did you end up responding out to a call regarding a shooting?
I did.
Were you the lead investigator at that time?
I was not.
What were your responsibilities? Well, let me back up. Did you learn who the victim of that shooting was?
Yes.
And who was that?
That was Charles Vallow.
Were you assigned certain roles or responsibilities on July 11th of 2019?
I was.
What were those?
They were minimal at that time. As I mentioned before, I joined the robbery homicide team in 2020, so I was not on the team at this point. And as this was a fatal shooting investigation, that's the team that would respond out. I was at that time still in Special Victims Unit, but I had made no secret of the fact that I intended to test for the robbery
I know,
homicide
right?
team in the near
Russell,
future. So as a matter of
seriously.
succession planning, I was invited to come out on various incidents that would be good training opportunities for me to see how the investigation was conducted. All of that is to say that much of my time at the scene was actually observing and not actually directly handling any particular responsibility.
At some point, were you given cell phone location data to review and analyze?
I was.
Do you know whose cell phone data that was?
Yes.
And whose was it?
That was data extracted from a device belonging to Charles Vallow.
As part of your role in the investigation, did you review phone or call detail records in relation to other phones?
I did.
Do you recall the various providers that you looked at records from?
Yes.
And who were those?
Those were T-Mobile, Verizon, and AT&T.
Do the records from all of the providers look the same?
They do not.
And can you explain a little bit about how they differ?
Each provider has their own, because again, these are maintained for their business records. They're not, law enforcement doesn't instruct them what data they have to keep. We can merely access the data that they do have. So each company has a different approach to how they maintain their data for their own purposes. Some are in spreadsheets, some are in text documents, some are multiple spreadsheets, some are much more consolidated. We take the data as they have it and analyze what they give us.
And in this case, were you the officer that drafted any of the search warrants for these call records?
No,
Did somebody else draft the search warrants?
that's right.
And then you were provided the data, the responsive data to analyze?
That's correct.
And did that include analyzing GPS?
It did include analyzing GPS location data, which was extracted from Charles Valla's phone.
Is it fair to call the call detail records raw data?
Yes,
And do you use a program to analyze that data once you have it?
yes. The Chandler Police Department has access to a program called Trax, formerly under a company called ZX, but they've transitioned to a company called LexisNexis. But the tool is a data analysis tool that we're able to use to analyze raw records that we are given by the companies.
And can you explain a little bit about how that program interprets the data to get a location of a cell phone?
Yes, you were, as mentioned previously, your device connects to various towers as you use voice, data, text, whatever you may be using. And we request and obtain from the providers locations of the towers and details about the tower. Typically, a tower is going to have multiple sectors. So while you have one tower, ordinarily that tower has antenna facing in sectors divided up to provide 360-degree coverage. The data they provide indicates the azimuth, which is a fancy term for the 360-degree angle if you were looking down on the tower from above, that particular sector is facing, and then they provide the GPS location of where that tower is located.
Where do you use that at?
And the call detail
Or
records
what do you
will
do with
typically
it?
indicate when a particular communication event took place, which tower it connected to, and which sector. Using that
Sounds
data,
like a
then
hair
one can,
product.
get a general coverage area for where the device was most likely to have been at that time.
And when you talk about this program Trax, I think you also mentioned ZX. Is that what it used to be?
Yes, that was the company that initially developed it, I believe.
Is that program only available to law enforcement?
No, it's my understanding that it's available to paying customers who want to use it for various purposes. I'm familiar with instances where it's been used by defense and people doing private analysis.
In your experience, do cell phone companies use technology that looks for the best signal?
Typically. So as I mentioned before, you may start a call in one place and you either may move or you may not for one reason or another. During the course of that call, your device could switch to a different tower because the signal's better. Environmental conditions can impact signal strength, line of sight, obstructions in the environment, and then again, when we move and our devices move with us.
And to be clear, when we talk about the location of a device, that's the cell phone itself, not necessarily the person it's associated with. Is that correct?
Correct. Call detail records can tell you information about where a device most likely was at a given moment. The question of who's holding the device is something that must be examined or determined from context or other means.
And we've talked about in this particular case, you were given some phone records to review.
Yes,
Do you recall what you looked at in this case?
I do.
And what was that?
So there were records of 4 different phone numbers, again, between Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T, that were attributed to various people involved in this investigation. Again, I did not write the warrants to obtain that data. I was just given the data after it had been obtained.
When you're provided phone records, what are you looking for?
So typically, what I want to determine if there are claims that have been made in this investigation or are relevant to the investigation that could possibly be tested by the data set that I've been given. There are certain questions that your cell phone data set might be able to answer and certain questions that they cannot. So if, for example, someone said that in a room with just the two of you there, you said a particular thing, I'm unlikely to find an answer to that in your cell phone data records. It's not likely to be there. But as far as analyzing when and where people tended to be, or if they were in fact communicating without necessarily knowing what they communicated about, those are things that one can evaluate. So you look at the records and try to determine by looking at them if there are reasonable conclusions that can be reached from what's in that data set that would be relevant to your case.
And in this case, did you prepare an exhibit of the information you reviewed?
I did.
And was the information you reviewed extensive?
Yes,
Do you feel that the exhibit would aid you in your testimony today?
it would.
Do you feel it would aid the jurors in understanding the evidence you're going to talk about?
I do believe it would.
Your Honor, I have what's been marked as State's Exhibit 43 However, I had talked with counsel in the court before. I have it plugged into my laptop ready to play. It does take a minute to upload. Counsel has been provided a copy. I would ask to publish at least the first slide of it for identification purposes.
Okay. If there's no objection, then we'll go ahead and permit you to publish that first slide. And I'll note also, we did provide time for defense counsel to review this on the break. So you can do that, Ms. Blake.
And I will indicate there should be a mouse up on the stand for the detective to use as we get further.
I think also we would have the option here to just put that on the witnesses monitor and not publish to the jurors. Is that preference yours?
For identification purposes, the first slide does not contain much information. It does contain some phone numbers, however, that were analyzed.
Okay, well, we can just go ahead and publish that on the big screen then also. And I don't think that would be a problem if the jurors viewed that.
And Detective Werther, do you recognize the slide we're seeing on the screen?
I do.
Was this in fact prepared by you?
It was.
And did you and I meet yesterday to review the exhibit as well?
Yes.
And was it an accurate copy of what you created?
Yes, that's right.
Your Honor, I would move for the admission of State's Exhibit 43.
Any objection?
There's no objection, Judge.
Oh, very well. Exhibit 43 is entered, and as it's an electronic type exhibit, Ms. Blake, if you could just describe a little bit for the record what the exhibit is.
Yes, Your Honor. The exhibit is a PowerPoint. I believe it contains approximately 128 slides.
Hey, Devious.
120 something slides.
That's hilarious.
As well as a few embedded things as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, for Mom's Day, right?
And Detective Werther, on
Oh.
this first slide, do you see some phone numbers listed?
I do.
And you previously mentioned that you looked at 4 call detail records for
I
4
was-
numbers.
I was
Okay.
wrong
Are
about
those the
the
4 numbers that you looked at
battery.
the
It
call
actually
for?
does.
Those are the 4 numbers, and then that last
lasts
one,
longer than I
mentions
thought.
Charles Valley's phone extraction. That's because, as I mentioned before, that's data taken directly from the device.
So
not
it's
from a
like
cell phone
really
service provider.
good.
And as we start moving through this, what are we seeing? Actually, let me back up. What records were you given? Are those what were depicted on the first slide?
Yes, and the slides that follow will show them again as well.
What are we seeing on this first slide?
This is just to orient the viewer or the reader that my analysis pertains to Chandler Police Department's investigation, number 2019-83744, a shooting investigation in the city of Chandler, in Arizona, that occurred on July 11th, 2019. This is a CAD call. CAD call is a computer-aided dispatch call, which is what's sent to the officers to notify them they need to go to a place for a particular reason.
Okay, I'll just tell you really quick. So I thought the battery was down. I was trying to vacuum the rug in the living room. And what happened was, it was, if you have it on the highest setting or even the medium setting, it thinks that it has sucked something up whenever it's trying to vacuum the ruggable. The ruggable has to be on the lowest setting. Otherwise, it kept shutting itself off because that's how hard it sucks. Every other place in my house is a rug. It's not, there's no carpet here, but it does the other rugs. But the ruggable, it was getting it all sucked up in there. Yes. Yeah. So I was thinking that the battery was down. And so I would charge it up. And then if the baby was asleep or something, I wouldn't vacuum out there. I was vacuuming everywhere else. So all of a sudden I'd charge it again. And then I go out there and it stopped working. I started to cry, but then I realized that it was not it. I know. I didn't cry about everything. I'm telling you. Sometimes I'm telling my kids a story and they're like, "You were crying, weren't you?" And I'm like, "Yes, I was." Oh, wow. Yeah, vacuums are way fun.
And it shows the time that the call to 911 was received. Was
Sorry, I just had to
8:36.
clear that up.
And a dispatcher or call taker entered the initial comments here, RP shot brother-in-law. This call was made.
Oh
by
yeah, if
Alex
I'm
Fox,
anything, I'm
And what would RP stand for?
reporting party.
I
And if we
get
move to the next
stuck on
slide.
something and
And on this
It gets
slide,
dumb.
what are we seeing here?
This represents the
Hmm.
records that I was given and that I used in this analysis for a particular phone number, that phone number being 8087555452, which is a Verizon number. And when it was given to me, it was attributed to being a phone used by Lori Vallow.
And if we move forward, and what are we seeing on this slide?
This is the same sort of breakdown, and I should have mentioned each of those line items that one reads on these slides. Those are the titles of the documents I was given pertaining to the particular record. So this is a T-Mobile phone number, 480.
I cry about different things.
9562, also attributed to Lori Vallow.
So this is a second device attributed to Lori Vallow that you looked at.
Correct. And one thing I noticed, and I've noted it here when I received these records, no logs of text messages were received, received by me. Ordinarily, your call detail records include not only the voice calls that you make and receive, or that your device makes and receives, but also any text messages sent. For whatever reason, and I don't know what it is, I did not receive text message logs pertaining to this number.
And then if we move forward, what are we seeing on this slide?
This tells you of the records from Verizon for number 480-351-9120, attributed to Alex Cox, and again, a listing of the documents that I received for this analysis.
And then if we move forward from there, what are we seeing on this slide?
This is a listing of AT&T documents pertaining to number 515-402-0143. And when I was provided these records, I was told that they were attributed to Chad Daybell.
And when you looked at these particular records, did you notice who it appeared that the phone attributed to Chad Daybell had been in contact with?
I did notice various communications between this and primarily one other number on the day in
Oh, I
question.
hope so too.
And what other
K9 I
number was
do.
that?
The primary number was one of the two numbers attributed to Ms. Lori Vallow. It's shown throughout the slides as to which of those two particular numbers it was.
And when you talk about on the day in question, what specific day did you look at these call details for?
I mostly limited my analysis to the day of the shooting in Chandler, as that was my task to analyze what these records could tell us about that particular event. So that previously mentioned July 11th of 2019.
And then if we move forward, you'd previously mentioned that you looked at the locations extracted from Charles Vallow's phone. Is that correct?
Correct.
Did you look at any other data in relation to Charles' phone at that time?
No.
And can you remind us again or explain the difference between the records for Charles' phone versus those for Lori, Alex, and Chad?
Yes. So all of the four numbers that we've gone through, those are records. As I mentioned, a warrant was sent to a cell phone service provider, and then they provided in return various records related to their customer and that particular device and what it was doing during the time frame authorized. This is different in kind. This is data extracted from Mr. Vallow's mobile device. And that data, as I understand, is primarily sourced from GPS, which is a different system than when your device is communicating with a cell phone tower.
And if we move to the next one, what are we seeing on this slide?
So this is to help orient the viewer to how this is going to be represented, this data from Charles' device. So we have the ability at the department, I'm not one of the people who does it, to extract data directly from someone's device. And then that data produced as a spreadsheet that was given to me can be mapped to GPS coordinates, same as we all use if you've ever used a mapping device on your phone to be able to get from one place to another. That sort of data is the type of data we're talking about. And in the presentation, the data from the phone extraction for Charles Vallow will be represented as points, as you see on the screen, in red. And that point represents the latitude, longitude that was extracted from the device.
And the red specifically will be in reference to Charles Vallow's phone?
Correct. I've color-coded the individuals associated with this, their devices, so that it helps the viewer to keep track of which device we're looking at a given point.
And if we move forward to slide 10, what are we seeing?
Good
on this
afternoon,
slide?
Mirandy.
This is to help, again, orient what you're about to see. These are cell site markers. So we have Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile up on the screen. And when a cell site or a cell tower was indicated in the records as having communicated with the given device, they've been color-coded. So blue for Lori Vallow, yellow for Chad Daybell's device, and green for Alex Cox's device. And the tower will be represented by that color-coded pin.
And if we move forward to the next slide, what are we seeing on this slide?
This slide again shows the various devices, and it shows the color coding of what's known as an H-plane, which I'll discuss in more detail on the next slide.
You
but
know
it shows that
what?
color coding will be maintained for those as well.
Then if we move to slide 12,
So what she needs to do, she needs to say, so, are you aware that Chad Vallow has not been charged with the death of Charles Vallow. And when they say yes, say so, but basically he was very involved in this. So cram it up your ass. Cram it up your cram hole. Keep talking to people about fucking whether he's not charged. And the only reason he's not going to be because he's going to get the death penalty right there. Big sorry sack of shit. I hope she asked him something like that. Look at what yeah, he wasn't even in the state, but guess what? Piece of shit.
And I think you said you discussed the H-plane a little bit more. Can you explain what we're seeing on this slide and what the H-plane is?
H-plane is short for horizontal plane. And as I mentioned before, towers have sectors, and the records indicate a device communicated with a particular sector. So as you see, that black dot is the location of the cell site with which the device was communicating. And the line is the azimuth, or the direction that the antenna was oriented on that sector that the device communicated with. This particular shape is an estimate of how the radio frequencies that are broadcast from that particular sector would propagate. So testing that's been done in a thing called an anechoic chamber, which is basically a room, the purpose of which is to dampen sound and radio frequencies, to dampen their reflection off of objects and so forth, has allowed engineers to determine approximately the shape in which those radio frequencies are broadcast from a particular sector. Now, that would be under laboratory circumstances. The real world is not a laboratory circumstance. So this is a representation of what one would expect in a laboratory from the performance of that sector. It's important to understand this is not where you see this color-coded shaded area.
Faith. Yeah,
this
it's
is where the
prior.
device is most likely to have been
Chad.
for that event, but it is not a claim that the device had to be within that area, or definitely was within that area. It's an estimate of a likely location.
Attorney.
And
I
then if
can't
we move
stand
forward to
him.
the next slide, what are we seeing on this slide?
This is again to orient us to what we're going to view throughout most of the exhibit. So in producing the exhibit using Google Earth Pro with processed records that can be mapped and viewed in Google Earth Pro, there's certain features that one should be aware of. This top thing in Google Earth Pro is known as a timeline slider bar, and it allows one to move forward and back in time through the records and indicates at what point in time one's currently looking. Then this shaded area, as I mentioned before, is the estimated device location for one of the devices mapped in blue. This one is for one of the devices mapped in green. If you have multiple devices, they'll both be on the screen at the same time with their estimated locations. And then the red points there is an estimated location of the extracted GPS data from Charles Vallow's phone.
And what are we seeing on this next slide?
Just in order to reduce clutter on the screen, I've used shorthand. In this case, everyone has different initials, so that seemed a reasonable way to do it. So where you see CV, that refers to Charles Vallow. Where you see LV, that refers to Lori Vallow. CD refers to Chad Daybell, and AC refers to Alex Cox with their various color coding. Again, just to reduce clutter.
Yeah, it is. That is him.
And
And
then what are we going to see on these next slides?
that's what I'm
These
saying.
next
Why
slides will
is
start
he
bringing
so
us
involved?
into representations of
Thought he
the
had
actual
nothing to do with
analysis
it.
of these various records when they're all put together.
And-
So
Oh, what are we seeing on this slide?
yes, thank you. So
got his
this
sorry ass up
was,
and
as
everything
mentioned
'cause he's a
before, I
piece of
provided some of this
shit.
information on July 11th, 2019, 8:36 a.m. Chandler police received the 911 call regarding a shooting alleged to have been in self-defense at 5531 South 4 Peaks Place in Chandler. Police officers responded. They contacted Alex Cox at that location and found Charles Vallow inside deceased with multiple gunshot wounds. And during the course of the investigation, Lori Vallow returned to the scene at 8:48 in the morning with her daughter, Tylee Ryan. Interviews were conducted with the various people involved, and then cell provider location data, as we've discussed, was later obtained, and the cell phone location data was extracted from Charles Vallow's phone.
And if we move forward, what does this slide depict?
As I mentioned before, when you have a certain amount of information about a case, and then you have a data set, the question is, what can that data set possibly tell me? Does it support the claims? Does it refute the claims? Or does it tell me nothing about the claims? These are some of the things that I noted that seemed like they could be tested by looking at the data. So some of these claims include things like the particular time that Charles Vallow was said to have arrived at the South 4 Peaks Drive location, the question of whether Lori Vallow was or was not present at the time of the shooting, whether she did in fact end up with his cellular phone after the shooting, which is a claim that was made, whether the children were present, and then events after the shooting. The claim had been made by Lori that she went to a nearby Burger King and that she went to a drugstore to buy flip-flops for herself and the children. She said they had to leave without shoes because of the event. and that she dropped JJ off at Lauren's Life Academy, which is a school that he attended, and then returned after doing all those things. And one other thing is she had made the claim that
did.
Alex called
Yep.
Lori after the shooting, and they discussed whether he would.
No,
cooperate.
no, that was Monday.
So those are all things that you.
Oh
felt you
no,
could try
as
to
far as
verify
evidence,
or
yeah,
disprove
Pryor got it
in
handed to
looking
him
at the various
yesterday.
events and timeline given.
Yes, these seem like things
Monday,
that cell phone
the-
locate, estimated locations and also
the
communication
judge
records should be able to at least give some
gave him a
indication
good
of whether
what
these things
for.
were supported or refuted by the data.
And if we move forward, were you looking to
The 7
corroborate
twats
or find
revealed.
something that would refute some of the information provided?
Yeah, so specifically with reference to
Yes,
the
that's what
cell
happened
phone,
yesterday. It's a
the
fact.
call detail records from the various providers
Yeah.
and also locations
All
on
this
Charles's
shit
phone. It's
came
important not to take
from
those things at case value and say, well,
Chad.
the data says that the
Hey,
device was there,
legs.
so it absolutely had to be there because the data has an error rate.
I
All
am
data has an
feeling
error
better.
rate.
Thank you.
So one of the other things we try to do when we're doing investigations is find other means of corroborating or refuting the data, because if the data are not accurate, we want to know that. And so
Oh, I
we're
love
looking
that
for other
judge
things
jumping
that
his
might
ass.
show. And throughout the presentation, I try to intersperse some of
But
those
yeah.
things that we found.
7 twats
Regarding the records
made
you
it very
received,
clear.
what is the first thing you did with the records?
The first thing that I did with the records when I received them is look through the actual raw records and see what sort of records even I had been given, and notice certain things like, again, the lack of text detail for Lori. And so I asked if that was somewhere else and determined that for one reason or another, and I don't know why we don't have it. So after looking through the records, I used that program we discussed previously to produce a file that can be viewed in Google Earth Pro so that I can put all of the various data sets alongside one another in a timeline mapped, and then move through them and see what each of the data sets indicates about what the device was likely doing during that time.
And again, was your analysis restricted to the events of July 11th of 2019?
Yes, it was.
Were the records set to a specific time?
Yes, because we're investigating an incident in Arizona, they're all interpreted in Arizona. Typically, when they provide the records from the subscribers, they're going to set them to GMT, Greenwich Mean Time, also known as Zulu time sometimes. Arizona is always 7 hours behind that. So all of these records are set to GMT -7. And that includes the records for Chad Daybell, which indicate that, in fact, he was in Idaho at the time, which is a different time zone. But in order to be able to see them all as they actually happened, I set his records to Arizona time. Otherwise, what you would see is all the Arizona events, and then 1 hour later, you'd see an Idaho time event that in reality had happened 1 hour earlier. It would be very confusing.
And if we move forward, is this an animation you created?
Yes.
And can you explain what we're seeing here?
The purpose of this animation is to orient the viewer to the general areas that are going to be involved in this analysis. So that's the Phoenix metro area. Chandler is on the left-hand side. You'll see the map pop up again as the data loads. And then certain areas of particular interest to the case are being labeled as we watch for reference to get you a general idea of where they're all located.
Yeah, like where we went on our
And
field trip.
There's a residence there. It looks like a house icon.
Yes.
What does that represent?
The one on the left side of the screen, because I've used 2 house icons, the one on the left is 5531 South Four Peaks Place, which is the incident location of the shooting. And I should mention, although it's likely obvious, that north is the top of the screen and it will remain so throughout the animations.
And then the other residence that we see there?
That is Alex Cox's residence at, oh, that should not have done that. Alex Cox's residence at 1658 East Shari Street in Santan Valley.
And there are some other
Yep, Santan Valley.
And there are some other icons there. Are we going to talk more about those a little later?
We will talk about those locations as they come up.
And if we move forward,
Yes, I think we should. Oh. There we are.
and what are we seeing on this screen?
This is an estimate of the distance from the 5531 South Four Peaks Place address to a Burger King that wound up becoming an area of relevance. And the estimated distance is 1.96 miles.
Oh, fun, Maze. Yikes.
And if we go to the, and is that the measurement that was depicted on that screen?
That is the measurement depicted on that screen, yes.
And on this next one, what are we seeing here?
This is an estimated distance from the Four Peaks Place address to Lauren's Life Academy, which, as I previously mentioned, is the school that JJ attended at the time. The measurement depicted on the screen is an estimate that says 7.2 miles.
And if we move to the next one, what are we seeing here again?
This again is that CAD call hard copy showing that the 911 call was received at 8:36.
And if we go to the next slide, did issues of timing and what was reported as far as times cause concern early on in the investigation?
Yes, we pretty quickly noticed there's an issue of plausibility as far as the timeline. If the 911 call was received at 8:36, and if Lori returned to Four Peaks at 8:48, which is 12 minutes later, you notice you have to go about a little over a mile to go to the Burger King, and then 7 miles round trip to go to the Academy. Added in the claim that there was a stop at a drugstore, we began to become concerned about a delay in calling 911, which is ordinarily concerning. Ordinarily, if a shooting event happens, 911 is normally called relatively quickly.
And I think I failed to ask, did Lori report that she'd stopped at that Burger King
She did.
and then that she'd taken JJ to school?
Yes, and I should clarify, I spoke to her. She told me she stopped at a Burger King. I'm not positive she specified that one.
Was that one on the way to JJ school?
Yes, I think it's the nearest one, and it's also between the two locations.
And then she also reported stopping at a drugstore?
That's right.
And if we move forward, what do we see on this slide?
This is the first location data point among all the data sets that I had for that day. This is an indication of a GPS location from Charles Vallow's phone, and you'll see right there on the left-hand side. True by Hilton at 1950 South Santan Village Parkway.
And what are we seeing here?
This is an overlay of a receipt that was later recovered when we went to the True by Hilton that indicates that that is in fact where Mr. Vallow was staying on the date in question. So as I mentioned, we're trying to see if data appear to be accurate or not. This does appear to show him at the hotel where he was known to be staying, or his device at the hotel where he was known to be staying.
And in moving to the next slide, what are we seeing here?
So this is a record from the 0143 number attributed to Chad Daybell, where it texts the 9562 number attributed to Lori Vallow. As I mentioned, for that 9562 number, I don't have text logs. So to the extent that I can examine those communications, it has to be viewed from the records produced regarding the 0143 number. And this here would be the estimated location of that 0143 number at the time, which is 6:06 in the morning, Arizona time.
And if we go to the next slide,
this is advancing the time to 6:12 in the morning, and this is Lori Vallow's 9562 number texting Chad Daybell's 0143 number.
and this is again on July 11th of 2019.
That's right.
And if we go to the next slide,
Advancing again to 7:01 in the morning, the Chad Daybell 0143 number texts the Lori Vallow 9562 number. And these are just, again, the mapping estimates associated with each of these communication events for the 0143 number.
and moving forward, what do we see here?
This is starting back at that 0003 GPS event, and it showed the various GPS events all the way up to 0716. If you saw them popping up on the screen and then passing, it would show that they were all generally in the area of that hotel until 7:16 in the morning on the 11th.
And then if we move to the next couple slides,
So at 7:16 in the morning, the device, Charles Vallow's device location data shows it traveling from that Hilton through various streets to the area of the Four Peaks residence. And one of the things I wanted to highlight here, as I mentioned, all data has an error rate. Yes, I do not have any reason to believe that Charles Vallow's phone was actually in the backyard of that neighboring house. There's just an error rate, and that's something to keep in mind when one reviews these things. But it shows it arriving in the area of the Four Peaks residence at 7:32 in the morning.
and the last communication between Chad and Lori prior to this that you noticed was about 7:01 or just after 7 in the morning.
That's right, on that device, yes.
And if we move forward, what are we going to see here?
This is going to show, again, the 0143 number, texting Lori Vallow's 9562 number, and this is at 7:33 in the morning. This is the same approximate time that the device data indicates that Charles Vallow's device arrived near Four Peaks.
And again, we don't have the content of those messages. Is that correct?
I do not have those. If someone has them, I'm not aware of it.
And this is a device associated with Chad texting a device associated with Lori.
That's right. And I'm not familiar with the area, of course, but I imagine those of you up here are more likely to recognize this area.
And if we move forward,
So until 7:50, the data from Charles Vallow's device indicates it was in the general area of the Four Peaks address. Then about 7:50, you see that it has now moved away and out towards the surface street, which is Gilbert Road. So that's approximately 18 minutes after the device arrived near Four Peaks. It is now off and in transit, and about 46 minutes prior to the time when the 911 call will occur.
And you previously indicated it was stated Lori Vallow ended up in possession of Charles' phone.
Yes, that's the claim she made, and that's also how it was later recovered by one of the detectives, was from Ms. Vallow.
And if we, actually, I'm looking at the time, Judge, would you like us to keep going?
Well, I think we ought to go ahead and take the noon recess at this time, Ms. Blake. So we'll go ahead and take lunch. Let's start back up right at 1 o'clock, please. Okay, we're back on the record on KCR 22-21-16-23, State of Idaho versus Chad Daybell. Detective Werther's on the stand. I'll remind the witness you're still under oath for your testimony. And Ms. Blake, you were conducting direct if you'd like to continue. And if you're still publishing the Exhibit 43, you can do that as well.
Thank you. And we may need to go back one screen.
I think more than one. There are a few auto advances, and I think they did their thing while we were away.
And I think this is a slide we left on, correct?
I believe so.
And again, to remind the jurors, what were we seeing on this slide?
This was GPS location data extracted from Charles Vallow's phone, and this represented that at about 7:50 in the morning, the device left the area of the Four Peaks address that we've been discussing. I had mentioned that that's about 18 minutes after the device arrived and about 46 minutes before the call would be made to 911.
And I think we talked about it, but I believe Lori had indicated she had Charles' phone with her.
That is what she had claimed, yes.
And if we go to the next slide.
Okay.
What are we seeing on this slide?
This slide is representing, these are those H planes we had discussed before, indicating where a device most likely was at the time an event happened. This event is actually a call that should have stayed up. This is a call made between Alex and Lori, between Alex's device and Lori's device, rather, and shows that at 7:52, sorry, the auto advance is going to keep doing that. At 7:52, you can see the devices are communicating, and it shows the most likely location where those two devices were at that point.
So Lori and Alex's device were communicating.
Correct. That was a voice call at 7:52 between the two. Recall the claim had been made that after the shooting that Alex and Lori communicated via phone, and this is one of a few instances I found where there was a voice call between their devices.
And that was before the 911 call.
Before the 911 call, we've not got to the 911 call yet.
And then what are we seeing here?
These would be those overlapping H planes. So the blue represents the most likely area for Ms. Vallow's device to have been, and the green is the most likely area for Alex Cox's device to have been. The green, of course, includes the Four Peaks address, and the blue includes the Burger King we're going to talk about momentarily.
All right. And if we go forward.
Yes.
And what are we seeing here?
This is location data derived from Charles Vallow's device, which shows that at about 7:55, it was in the area of that Burger King on Ocotillo Road that we previously highlighted.
And if we go forward, what is this slide telling us?
This is my way of, we talked about wanting to corroborate data and then, or refute the data if it turns out to be the case that the data isn't reliable, and also to test the various claims. So if it is true that Lori Vallow was in possession of Charles Vallow's phone at this point, then that location data in the Burger King parking lot area would also be representative of where Ms. Vallow likely was. That would show the data set were apparently reliable, and it would also show that Ms. Vallow appeared to have the phone. So to test those claims, we look for that evidence. And one of the things I did in order to look for that evidence is go to that Burger King to view that video and see if in fact we saw Ms. Vallow.
And did you in fact do that?
Yes.
And if we move forward, then what are we going to see in these next slides?
So these will be 3 different video clips recovered from the Burger King location. I went there and I viewed them in person, and then they were later provided by the Burger King security personnel. You see the timestamp of 7:54. One of the things I do and that I did in this case is while I was at the Burger King, I checked what their video system time thought the time was, and I checked that against my work cell phone, which I know to be reliable, and it showed that their timestamps appeared to be accurate. So the 7:54 is roughly accurate to the time.
And is this particular vehicle one associated with Lori Vallow?
It is. I personally observed this vehicle not the day of the shooting, but the next day. This red Kia Sorento with this particular Colorado plate that you see up on the screen. I went to the Four Peaks address on the 12th and I saw that vehicle. And just for reference, I think I've enlarged the area where the plate is to show that it seems to be generally consistent with those characters.
And do you recall learning that Lori indicated she'd heard the shot,
That's what I was told, yes.
and yet she's at the Burger King at approximately 7:54?
That's right.
And the 911 call does not come in until about 8:36?
That's right.
And then if we go forward,
Video from the drive-through that momentarily will show a person that I recognize as Ms. Lori Vallow, having seen her in person.
and from this video, could you tell who was in the vehicle with her?
I can tell that there's at least one other person in the vehicle. I personally can't see that person clearly enough to say who that person is.
And were you aware that Lori indicated she'd left the residence with both of her children?
That's right.
And do you recall the approximate distance from this Burger King and the residence Lori was residing at the time?
I said it earlier, it was 1 point something miles. I don't recall what followed the decimal,
Fairly close distance then.
relatively.
And again, according to Lori, she'd already heard the shot. So at this time, according to Lori, Charles was already shot.
According to her claim, yes,
And she's at a Burger King drive-through.
correct.
And what are we seeing in this slide?
This is the video from the drive-through after the order has been accepted, and it'll show the vehicle leaving at 7:55 a.m.
And was this consistent with where Charles' phone location showed his phone?
That's correct.
And what are we seeing on this slide?
This just goes back to that claim. So now we have, if we see Lori there, we see Charles's phone, puts the phone location data in that general area. So this would suggest that the claim that she had the phone is supported by this evidence.
And if we move forward, what are we seeing here?
This is going to be another call, I believe, between Alex Cox's phone and Lori Vallow's phone, and also location data extracted from Charles's phone. And as the animation continues, there will come a point where the H plane from the phone call for Lori Vallow will be overlaid, I believe. Yes, there it is. And you'll see, as I mentioned before, the H plane is where the device is likely to have been. And then Charles Vallow's GPS data also is within that H plane. So those devices are indicated to have been in the same general area. And there is Alex's H plane in green, showing an area that does include the Four Peaks address. And these are the details for each of those calls coming up on the screen now.
And if we move forward,
So the claim had been made that Ms. Vallow stopped at a drugstore to buy flip-flops or sandals for at least for herself and at least one of the children. This is location data from Charles's device showing it arriving at around 8:08 in the area of a Walgreens on Lindsay. It does not stay for very long, and then actually is going to go to a different drugstore, also Walgreens, I believe. This, I believe, is at 8:16. That'll come up in a moment at a Walgreens on 785 South Cooper. Yes, that's 8:16. And these are the location data from Charles's phone again.
And again, she's at a Walgreens prior to any call being made to 911.
Call to 911 has not yet been made.
If we continue,
So that slide is redundant, sorry. This would be the video that I recovered from that Walgreens, showing that at 8:16 on their timestamp, Ms. Lori Vallow walks in. And there's the register view of her buying the sandals as claimed.
and did this match up with the location data on Charles' phone?
Yes, again, everything has an error rate, but the device is in the area of this Walgreens at the same time,
And again, this is presumably after Charles has been shot, according to Lori.
according to Lori.
And again, prior to the 911 call being made.
Correct. So now we're at 8:20 and the video shows Ms. Vallow walking out.
And then what are we seeing here?
This is the location data from Charles of the device again, picking up over by Gilbert Road and then transitioning down towards the Lawrence Life Academy. You see that one data point that's in the area of the academy in the parking lot. And that data point's details will come up in a moment, and I believe it's 8:20 in the morning. Oh, sorry, 8:32. My apologies.
And again, Lawrence Academy is where JJ was attending school.
That's right.
And if we move forward, what are we seeing here?
This is going to show Charles Vallow's device location at the time that the 911 call was placed by Alex Cox. So that's the device location in red on Gilbert Road, north of the freeway. And that is the H-plane for the 911 call made from Alex's Cox device, which initiated the police investigation in this matter. And this, for reference, is about 63 minutes after the device location data from Charles' phone first arrived in the area of Four Peaks in the morning.
If we move forward,
This brings us back to that CAD call, showing again that it's 8:36, just so that we're oriented. We're back to that point that I brought us to earlier.
and if we go to the next slide, what are we seeing here?
This is going to be the phone location data from Charles's device in transit down towards the Four Peaks address. There's a point just north of the freeway right now. And then it should pick up and show it arriving in the area of Four Peaks. This is the detail for one of those data points, showing that it's about 8:49 in the morning that you see the device is now in the area of the Four Peaks address.
And did that correspond with the time Lori arrived back at
It-
that residence?
It did.
And if we go to the next slide, what are we seeing here?
So this is taken from Officer Krautheim's body-worn video, and one sees Lori and Tylee arriving, and I noticed that the flip-flops do appear similar to the ones that we just saw purchased, so I've highlighted those. And then because the way he had his camera oriented, I have to turn the timestamp over for it to be read. And this is represented in Zulu time, which is also GMT, so you subtract 7 hours, you get 8:48 in the morning Arizona time. So again, the data from Charles' device is once again corroborated by something independent, in this case, the officer's body-worn video.
And if we move forward from here, what are we seeing?
This is more data corroboration. So there is an incoming call to Charles' device at 10:25. And the center of the screen where I've labeled Chandler PD, that's where the Chandler Police Department main station is. So what I did to check that is if he was at the main station, there would be evidence of that. And I see that at 10:25, there's Alex in one of the interview rooms.
And there's an indication that it was a missed call from M. Boudreau.
Right.
Do you know who that is in reference to?
I'm aware that that person's related to this case. I'm not fully aware of the facts of their involvement.
And would it be Melanie Boudreau?
That's right.
And if we go forward from here,
This is another incoming call, 10:26, again showing the H-plane does cover the area of the Chandler Police Department. And to corroborate that, there we are at 10:26 with Alex in the interview room.
And it shows a missed call from an S. Shiflett. Do you know who that was in reference to?
Yeah, I think the name is Summer Shiflett.
Do you know if she's Alex Cox's sister?
I believe that's right.
And this is Alex in an interview room?
Yes.
If we go to the next one. What are we seeing here?
This shows that at about 10:40, that's Detective Nate Moffett there. He's returning some items to Alex, and that includes Alex's cell phone. So we've been seeing those missed calls and the indication the device was in the area of that H plane, and there is the device.
And I think you said 10:40. Would it have been approximately 11:40?
Yes, thank you.
And if we move forward from here, what are we seeing on this slide?
This is an incoming call to Alex's device at 12:10, and the H plane once again covers the Four Peaks address.
And if we go forward from here, what are we seeing?
This is going back to the location data for Charles's device. That was the location data from the point at 8:49 when it arrived back at Four Peaks, all the way to 12:13 where we see it depart the area of Four Peaks.
And Charles Vallow has been declared deceased by this time.
Yes, that's right.
If we go forward, what are we seeing here?
This is going to show the movement of the location data from Charles's device north and east to an area by the freeway. And it will show a voice call with Lori Vallow and shows that the H plane, again, is overlapping the area where one sees GPS location data from Charles's device. And you see that those are within 2 minutes, really a little bit less than 2 minutes of one another. There's a 12:34 and 12:36 on those, showing that they're in the same general area at the same time.
And if we go to the next slide, what are we seeing here?
This should show a text from the 0143 number we've been considering attributed to Chad Daybell to Lori Vallow's 9562 number. And this is mapping the location data for that event from Mr. Daybell records indicating that his device is now in the area of Salt Lake City, Utah.
And did you determine an approximate time on that text?
Yes, it's showing 12:39 on the slider, and I think the actual record's going to come up here momentarily and show that. Yes, 12:39.
And again, were you able to look at the content of that message?
That's not available to me.
And if we move forward?
Maybe frozen, standby. It's not reacting on my end. Do you have the actual computer?
And hey, I'm also not getting any reaction.
That's less than ideal.
Your Honor, if we may take a momentary recess.
Yes.
And Detective Werther, is it going to be best if I close out and
Oh,
reopen it?
Be my best guess. If you hit escape so we're not presenter viewing, we'll see if we can note what slide we were on. That'll make it easier. But if it's not reacting at all, I think we'll have to just quit it and reopen it.
And I think it has frozen out. Your Honor, I'm going to unpublish it.
Okay.
And I believe it may take about 5 minutes to get it back up and running if we want to take a stretch break.
Okay, we can, yeah, we'll go ahead and do that. Everyone like to stand up if they want. Ma'am.
I'm kind of surprised about this. Longer than. Let me see. Okay, I'm trying to. I don't understand why they're even going down this road unless he is going to be involved in this. Who the hell? What the hell?
In a specialization in forensic science.
What is this now?
Thank you.
All right. The witness has been sworn at this time. What is this witness subject to the exclusionary order?
Your Honor, I guess there'd be an argument that she is not. Having said that, I don't believe she's watched any trial testimony from this trial.
Okay. And again, that's sometimes not all
What
that
is
easy to figure
this?
out who would or wouldn't be subject to it, but I will inquire. Have you been watching any trial testimony since this case began?
No, sir.
You
Hey,
haven't viewed it on the
Jules.
online feed or in the courtroom at all?
No.
Have you talked to anybody else about their testimony?
No.
Okay, then Mr. Wood, you can inquire on direct. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Can you state your name and spell it for the record?
Yes, Tara Martinez, Martinez,
And how are you employed?
with Idaho State Police Forensic Services,
What is your title there?
Forensic Scientist 2.
And what does forensic scientist 2 do?
Wow, what
It
happened?
depends what section of the laboratory you're in. So I'm in the latent print section. So that means that I process items of evidence to try to find fingerprints, and then I may compare those prints and may run them through a database. And then I also respond to crime scenes.
And how long have you been with the Idaho State Lab?
8 years.
And do you have any special training to accomplish your job duties?
So first I have a bachelor's of science in biological science with a minor in chemistry and a specialization in forensic science. And then once I was employed with Idaho State Police, I went through an extensive
Welcome
training
back,
program,
Gerri.
which included practical exercises, readings,
Gerri.
tests, and some external training and different training classes outside the laboratory.
And are you a member of any professional organizations related to your job?
Yes, I'm a member of the International Association for Identification, as well as their Pacific Northwest Division.
You mentioned earlier that you process latent prints. What are latent prints?
So latent print means a impression that's left unintentionally. So I may touch this desk here and I may be able to leave an impression behind. Generally, these impressions aren't easy to see. They need to be enhanced or processed in some way to be able to visualize them.
And what is the process used to develop a latent print for purposes of your examination?
It really depends on the item. So when I receive an item into the laboratory, I'm first looking at the item to try to decide which methods I'm going to use. The first thing I'm looking at is the item porous or non-porous, meaning porous like paper absorbs water, and non-porous obviously repels water, like a water bottle, piece of plastic, things like that. And then once I've determined that, I may look at the color of the item or the texture of the item, and these things may help me decide which process I'm going to use. Mainly, though, depend upon whether it's porous or non-porous.
And when people touch something, do they always leave a latent print?
No, it depends on a lot of different factors. They can be broken down into little categories. So the first being pre-touch, like meaning the person. So some people leave really good prints behind. Really depends on how much they sweat. Maybe if they touch their other parts of their face or their body a lot, they'll have oil on their hands. So those are person factors. Those are before you touch the item. And then you have touch factors, meaning if you touch an item, how likely is it you're going to leave something behind? And that depends a lot on the item itself. Is the item dirty? Is it dusty? Is it textured? Those kinds of things would mean that you probably wouldn't leave a latent print behind very easily. And then the post-touch factors, meaning is the item left outside a lot? Is it raining? Is the print going to be evaporated by the sun? And then how the item is packaged. So there's a variety of factors to determine whether or not a latent print is left behind.
If a latent print is left behind, how is it that you would collect a latent print?
So again, it really depends on the item. Let's say, for instance, I have just a normal piece of plastic. It's a non-porous item. There's just plain old plastic. So in that case, I first do a visual examination, and I'm looking here to see first if I see any prints that someone may have left just incidentally. Maybe they have some oil on their hands. So maybe they have more skin cells on their hands and they just left a print. So I'm first looking for that. I'm also looking at the item to see if there's any other forensic evidence that might be important. Like, are there hairs on the item? Is there a lint on the item? And those things I'm collecting at that point. Then I move on to a different visual examination where I'm using different colors of light to try to see if I can see any prints that may be fluorescing. If you touch other things and then touch an item, you can leave a print behind that is fluorescent. Makeup, for instance, is fluorescent. So I'm looking to see if I see any of those kinds of prints. After that, I move on to super glue fuming. It's very similar to what you may have seen on CSI. It's super glue. It goes in a chamber, and the chamber controls the heat and the humidity. And basically, the super glue just comes into the air and attaches to any moisture on the item. And because latent prints are made of a lot of water, it will attach to latent prints. And this is helpful because the glue makes the prints more visible because it's white now, and it also makes them less likely to be wiped away. And then I move on to a dye stain, which stains the entire item, but will more adhere to those prints that I previously glued. And then lastly would be a powder, depending upon the type of item.
When you say powder, is that like the dusting?
Yeah, so it's usually black powder, but it's with a brush.
And if any of those processes work and you're able to develop a latent print, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the correct terminology, develop the print or?
Yeah, develop a print.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you go about comparing it to another print or a person?
First, if I see any prints during any of those steps, I'm preserving them at each step that I see the prints. And then at that point, once the processing is done, then it either moves to myself or another analyst to do comparison, what we call comparison process. So that process is kind of a long acronym, but it's ACE-V, which is ACE-V. So the A stands for analysis. So I'm looking at the print to determine, do I know where this print came from? Meaning, is it from a palm? Is it from a finger? Is it from the side of a finger? Do I know the location of the print? And then I also look at any kind of distortion. Every print you leave behind, you're making some type of distortion. So I'm looking at, do I see smears? Do I see voids in the print? Things like that. And then once I analyze the print and I say, yep, this print looks good, I'm gonna move it on to comparison, then I can pull generally fingerprint cards from the persons involved that the agency has let us know about. And then I do a back and forth comparison between an unknown and a known. Unknown again being the latent print. And I'm doing a back and forth comparison to see if the features I saw previously in my analysis phase, are they there in the known print? And not just are they there, but do they look similar to each other? Is their spacing the same? Things like that. And then the E stands for evaluation. So at that point, I'm saying, okay, I've done my comparison. What's my answer? Is this print from this source of this known or not from the source? Are they the same source? And then at that point, I'll make my determination. And then V stands for verification, or another analyst goes through and does the whole thing over again.
And so just to kind of summarize that, you look at the print, determine if it's sufficient to make a comparison,
Yes, sir.
all right, and then you attempt to make the comparison.
Yes.
You evaluate that and then have it verified by someone else.
Yes.
And you mentioned that, how do you compare it to someone else? You mentioned a print card?
So known prints are taken from people for various reasons. And so there is a database of known prints that I can access. So if I know who the agency would like this compared against, I know the persons involved, the victims, et cetera, then I'll pull cards from that database and be able to compare against them.
And do you ever sometimes go out and get prints from an individual so that you'll have something to compare your latent print with?
Yes, sometimes the record isn't very good, like the fingerprint card that was previously taken is of poor quality, or maybe I need areas of skin that weren't recorded, things like that. And we'll go out and take prints from known individuals for that reason.
Are you familiar with, for the year 2020, lab number 2233?
Yes,
What is that lab number associated with?
it is the Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell case.
All right. And did that involve JJ Vallow and Tylee Ryan as well?
Yes.
What was your first contact with that lab number?
My first contact was taking prints at the coroner's office. I assisted Rexburg Police Department with that.
And what did you do at the coroner's office?
I took known prints from the victim, JJ.
And did you have any other contact with that case?
Yes, I did some processing of that, of different items that were submitted in this case. And then I also took known prints of two other people, Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell.
All right. And did you collect any other samples from them besides known prints?
Yes, I also took buccal swabs. That's a swab to obtain cheek cells and saliva in the mouth for DNA.
And did you collect any hair samples?
Yes, I also did that.
Did you obtain any known samples for an Alex Cox?
Yes,
What were those?
I got two different samples. One was a standard fingerprint card where you're recording all 10 fingers. That was from the Federal Bureau of Investigation database. Like I said, you can be in there for a variety of reasons. And then the second cards I received were from the Gilbert Police Department that they submitted to me.
And the Gilbert Police Department, do you know why they had his fingerprints?
They said they were from his autopsy.
Did you do, referring to this lab number, did you do any actual latent print examinations?
Yes.
And can you tell us what items you did that on?
Yeah. So I checked out and processed items 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 18.
And did you process those items to search for prints?
Yes.
Okay, so let's, do you recall what item 10 was?
Yes. Item 10 was a white drawstring bag, like a trash bag, with gray colored pieces of duct tape attached to it. And per the agency, that was the bag around the head of JJ.
Were you able to develop any prints on that bag?
No.
Next was, I believe, item 11.
Yes.
What was that?
Item 11 was a mass of plastic and gray colored pieces of duct tape, said to be plastic and body bag JJ.
And without getting into the specifics of that, were you able to develop any latent prints on that item?
Yes,
Okay, and we'll come back to
Yeah.
that in a minute. I believe the next item was 12.
12.
What was that?
12 was one piece of gray colored duct type tape, and that was reported to be from the mouth of JJ.
And were you able to process any prints on that?
I did not get any prints on that, no.
And item 13,
Item 13 was one mass of gray colored duct type tape, and that was said to be from the ankles of JJ.
were you able to develop any prints there?
Yes.
And item 14,
Also one mass of gray colored duct type tape said to be from the hands of JJ.
and I believe the last item, was it 18?
18, yes.
And what was that?
One green colored piece of plastic with Lidica Corporation written on it, and it was said to be a green bucket from bag 2 of 3 from Tylee.
And were you able to develop any prints from that?
No.
From any of those items, were you able to collect any hairs?
Yes.
Where were you able to collect hairs?
Items 10, 11, 13, and 14.
And just briefly, let's talk about item 13. You said you were able to develop some prints from that.
Yes.
Were you able to do any successful comparison with those prints?
I did comparison. I don't know the word successful is, I'm not sure. but
Okay.
Let me explain. So I was able to develop 2 latent prints from item 13. Those were 13.1 and 13.2. And 13.2 was established, once it was in the comparison phase, it was established that it was not enough ridge detail for comparison. So at that point, there's nothing further to do. There's no comparison to be made. Whereas 13.1 was enough to compare and moved on to the comparison stage, but no identifications or exclusions could be made. So the print became inconclusive, and that was due to the quality of the latent print. So sometimes there's enough detail that you can do some comparison, but you may not be able to render a conclusion of identification or exclusion, and to kind of just get stuck in the middle.
So inconclusive is maybe the better word than
Yeah.
successful or unsuccessful.
Yes.
I'd like to talk to you about item 11. And if you can just briefly remind the jury what item 11 was.
Yes, item 11 is black colored plastic and gray duct type tape. The item itself is composed of multiple pieces, so I labeled them separately. So 11.1 to 11.11 is the gray colored duct type tape, and then 11.12 to 11.15 is the plastic pieces.
And Your Honor, I'm going to ask that the witness be handed what's been marked as State's Exhibit 210, and I do have a courtesy copy for counsel and the court. Ms. Martinez, are you familiar with Exhibit 210?
Yes.
When you, in anticipation of testifying before the jury today, did you prepare this exhibit?
Yes.
And what does that exhibit purport to be? Or what is the information contained in that exhibit? Let me ask that.
This contains the items broken down so that you can see photos of each of the items, as well as photos of each of the latent prints that were compared. And it includes what we call our charts, which is basically like my markup of the prints.
And Your Honor, I believe that this comes in by way of stipulation. But I would ask that this exhibit, or let me ask a couple more questions. Did you prepare that in anticipation of testifying before a jury?
Yes.
And do you believe that that would help the jury understand both the work you did and the results you found
Yes.
on this case? Your Honor, I'd ask that State's Exhibit 210 be entered into evidence.
Any objection?
Judge, it's entered by way of stipulation of the parties.
All right, then 210 is admitted, states 210.
And if I may publish, Your Honor.
Yes, you may.
Ms. Martinez, did this originate as a PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
That's the software you used to create this?
Yes.
And Your Honor, I'll be just publishing through the Elmo.
Okay.
Can you tell the jury what they're looking at on this page of the exhibit?
Yes. So on the left, you can see underneath it says item 11. So there's 2 different areas, I guess, of plastic on this photo. So the one on the left is what was processed, and the one on the right is what the one on the left came in. So it came in as this giant bag with bags inside. So the one on the right was not processed. And then on the right photo, where it says item 11.12, this is just 11.12. So being one of the pieces of plastic that was in that bundle. And then if you look at the top right there, you can see it says 11.12.1. So that's just an indication of where the latent print was on that item.
And if you can explain to the jury what they're seeing on the second page.
So this is just item 11.15. So just this piece of plastic, just this little guy here is 11.15. And you can see there that I have marked 11.15.1, which is where the latent print 11.15.1 was located on the item.
If you can tell the jury what they're looking at here.
So this is latent print 11.12.1. This is it developed. So this is the way the photo, this is the exact photo that I took at the time when I developed the print.
And what are they seeing here?
And this is the same photo, but I enhanced it. So I took it into Photoshop and I made some changes to make it black and white instead of it being that yellow color and up the contrast. So it's the same picture, it's just adjusted. And this is the analysis of the lane print. So I mentioned the charts earlier when I'm marking up the print, and analysis being the A of the methodology. So you can see here, there's a bunch of different dots on the screen, these yellows and these greens here. So those represent what I'm seeing. If the dot is green, I'm very confident at what I'm seeing. If the dot is yellow, I'm less confident, meaning I see features there. I just may not be sure what kind of feature it is, or maybe not exactly sure on the location. So this is my markup of the print. And then this is the comparison charting, as I said, the C in the methodology. So on the left, you have the latent print, and on the right, you have the known print. And this is my back and forth comparison between the two. You can see the dots that are blue, and then I numbered them for court reasons to correspond. So you can see the correspondence between the two.
All right, and I see it says comparison of latent print 11.12.1 to known print number 5 Cox. Is that referring to Alex Cox?
Yes, the conclusion at the end of this comparison was an identification to the card bearing the name Alexander Cox to number 5, meaning the right little finger.
And again, when it says item 11, it's referring to the black plastic that JJ's body was found in.
Yes. So this is the other latent print that was developed, 11.15.1. Again, this is the photo that was taken at the time when it was processed with the dye stain. And this is the same photo, but obviously enhanced, changed to black and white.
And is that, can you tell what body part that print is from?
In my analysis, I believe that I wrote that it was likely a palm. That is based on the flow I'm looking at here. You can also see that's much larger than the finger we just looked at. There's also some creases here and some other indicators that it's likely from a palm print.
And what's the jury seeing?
And this is, again, close up, and this is my analysis chart. So you can see here, there's some greens and some yellows marking up this print. So this is what my analysis markup looked like. And then here's the comparison markup again in the blue dots. Those are the correspondence with the corresponding numbers. And the conclusion after the comparison was that 11.15.1 was identified to the right palm of the fingerprint card or the palm print card bearing the name Alexander Cox.
So just to be clear, this comparison matched up with the print of Alex Cox.
Yes.
And again, this is from item 11. So part of the black plastic bags wrapped around
Yes.
JJ. Ms. Martinez, were you able to verify any other fingerprints from anyone else? Oops, I'm sorry. On any of those items?
I was not able to identify anyone else.
All right. And you mentioned that you collected some hairs.
Yes.
What did you do with those hairs?
I collected them using adhesive notes. So usually I use like something like a Post-it note. And I collected them and repackaged them in coin envelopes. And then they were returned with the item inside the item's original packaging.
And was that for other people to do different types of analysis?
Yes, I don't do hair analysis. So anything that I see that could be used for somebody else may want, like hair, lint, fibers, things like that, I will collect and save.
Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
Right. Right, Mr. Pryor, cross-examination.
Judge, before we start, I have Defense Exhibit 41 I'd like to have marked, and my understanding is that it's by stipulation of the parties.
Oh, yes.
All right, can you explain what Exhibit 41 is, please?
That would be part of the report that Ms. Martinez prepared as part of this investigation.
Very well. If that's being offered, I'll just take that up at this time. Is the state been able to review Exhibit 41?
Yes, Your Honor, we have no objection.
Very well. Defense Exhibit 41 is admitted.
Judge, may I proceed?
Yes.
Ms. Martinez, would it be fair to say that plastic is a good conduit to obtain fingerprints?
Yes,
It's because of the nature of how plastic is manufactured. It has an oil-based production, which would allow for fingerprints to be easily placed upon that kind of a surface. Would that be fair?
Yes, it's a very good surface for lane prints, mostly just because it's non-porous and it does have a nice coating on it.
Right. And in this particular case, you were clearly able to identify a fingerprint of Alex Cox. Is that right?
Yes,
And the bottom of the heel of the hand of Alex Cox on this plastic. Is that right?
it wasn't the bottom, but yes, a piece of the palm, yes.
The piece of the palm. Of the
Yes, under the two fingers right here, the middle finger and the ring finger, so higher up in the hand.
Okay. And then I don't know if I saw this in your report. You collected hairs in your process of going through all of the plastic that you were provided. Is that right?
Yes,
Do you have a recollection of how many hairs you collected as a result of your analysis?
I have to look at my notes. It's written down in my notes, but it's not something that was reported at the time.
Do you have your notes with you?
Yes,
Are they at the table with counsel?
Yep.
Mr. Bailiff, could you provide the witness? And Judge, could she use those to refresh her recollection?
Yes, I'll have her identify them once they're there. Thank you. Mr. Bailiff, if you wouldn't mind, please hand those to the witness, and these are notes for you to refresh your recollection, but don't read directly from them or read them into the record unless the court allows you to do that.
just to clarify, sir, just item 11 hairs, is that what you would like?
All of the hairs that were located on all of the plastic that was submitted to you,
All the plastic, okay.
all of the plastic.
My apologies, I had horrible allergies today.
What happened? Well, I remember how in the world did that happen? Wow, thank you, Faith. What did I miss here? Yeah, the grandparents are there. They also had a memorial service for JJ and Tylee.
And again, do you have a recollection of, after refreshing your recollection, do you recall how many hairs you sent off to the laboratory?
It's hard to say exactly how many because I collected them kind of as bundles and not every hair was collected individually,
Okay.
but it looks like about 50 different adhesive notes were used to collect them. And that's between items 10, 11, 13, and 14.
Okay. So there were a significant number of hairs that were
Aw.
located on
Yes, on all the plastic that was submitted.
and those hairs were sent off to Bode Laboratory. Is that right?
Huh.
I don't know where the hairs went. I just repackaged them.
Now, at any time, did you find all of those hairs on the first run through, or was that over a process of time that you were examining the plastic?
It looks like over a process of time. So some of them were right away during the first visual, and then others were seen after multiple processes.
And
How
after
funny.
multiple processes, you were able to identify these two latent prints of Alex Cox. Is that correct?
Yes,
And obviously, you've already noted that you are not, it's not within your department to deal with the latent prints. Is that right?
It's within my department to deal with the latent prints. I do latent prints.
I'm not.
Do you mean
sorry,
DNA?
DNA. I am so sorry.
No problem. Yeah, no, I don't do anything with DNA.
And I don't have allergies, so I don't have an excuse. Other than Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell, and Alex Cox, were you at any time by law enforcement asked to do any analysis of any other people, to do a comparison of any other prints?
No, I was asked to just do the comparisons for the people that were involved. So JJ, Lori, and Chad were the only people that I compared against.
Okay. And law enforcement determined who were involved in this. Is that right?
Yes, and that's pretty standard. We don't know their investigation, so they let us know who they would like us to look at.
They set the criteria as to who you want to have hairs and prints tested against. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, Judge, I have nothing else. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Pryor.
Well, who else would it be? Me? Or what the
Redirect,
fuck?
Mr. Wood.
Your Honor, the state has no redirect.
All right, Ms. Martinez, and that will conclude your testimony.
So
Does the
irritating.
state intend to keep her under subpoena or recall her
Your Honor, I believe she can be released from her subpoena.
from the defense?
Judge, I'm sorry, I didn't hear Mr. Wood's response.
The state would allow her to be released from a subpoena and not recall her as the
And
defense.
Judge, I'm sorry, I also subpoenaed Ms. Martinez, and I'm going to release her today as well from the subpoena I had served upon her.
Okay, thank you. So that will conclude your testimony. Thank you for appearing this afternoon, and you can go ahead and step down. We could have a sidebar, please, with counsel.
Oh, me too, Faith. No, exactly right. How stupid was that? Oh, so law enforcement gets to determine, huh? Well, who the fuck would? Joe fucking blow down the road? What the fuck does that mean? God, he just drives me nuts. The shit he says is just so the fuck? Well, shit makes you crazy. What? What?
All right, thank you, counsel. We are going to take
What are you
a
talking
mid-afternoon
about?
recess here to allow jurors to use the restroom, et cetera. So we'll take about 20 minutes, and then the state does have another witness lined up after that.
Oh my God,
So
that's
I'll
too
please rise for the
funny,
jurors.
Gerri.
All right, please.
Oh my Lord. Outside of court? What? Oh my God. Oh my God, that's hilarious. Her name's, oh wait, Lisa Richards. Oh my God, that's hilarious. Oh Lord. Wow. She's at court begging for cigarettes? What do you mean? Courthouse stood outside and begged for, oh my God. Is that the name of the channel? I'm Lisa Richards. Is that what you said? Oh my God. What the hell is wrong with people? Well, she's live right now. Oh, wow. Yeah, I don't know. Last week, her Cash App kept getting reported, so she actually put her drug dealers. Shut up. No. No way. Oh, God. Yeah, I think you're right, Frazzle. I think so. Devious has been doing shorts on her, and Flavor is going to start covering her. Seriously? You've got to be joking. Wow. I don't even know what to say to that. Oh my God. Yeah, seriously, you put your drug dealers. Oh my God. She live in Idaho. Wow. Oh my word. Yeah, I didn't know about her. I mean, wow. She actually said that's her drug dealer? Who in the hell does that? Oh my God. Sometimes I wish I could just be so damn stupid. But I didn't know any better than to. Wow. Right, right. Well, yeah. Oh, you guys are asses. Asses, asses. Clearly, you're both assholes. And if you don't want to vacuum her home, yeah, right? Lit her crack pipe. Oh my God. What? Wow. Oh, stop, stop, stop. Oh, God. Wow. I know. My God. She won't. Wow. This is crazy. I guess people give her money though, huh? That's a pretty that's going pretty far to put your drug dealer's cash app on there. Wow. Yeah, I'm not gonna fall for shit. I've only seen ridiculous. Yeah. I don't want to see cockroaches and shit. That's sick. That song. Wow. Yeah. Oh, Lord. Yeah. Three little assholes. Yeah, no, I'm not going to. I'm not even going to watch that shit. I don't have time or patience. I don't watch anybody doing that. I don't. Yeah, I've learned, but the thing is, I don't go to channels. Probably somebody have more luck coming in here and starting it with me, but I don't go to the channels. Yeah, we know better now. Damn, I cannot believe that though. Wow. I have watched some of those clip channels. Who's that guy? Oh my gosh. BGTV. He's so funny. He talks about Shani and Rev, but I haven't watched him for a while. But anytime I watch him, I laugh my ass off. Just the way he talks about her is so funny. I mean, seriously, those people. It's BGTV, Gerri. It's funny. I heard him talking about Shani and he has another girl up on the panel with him. They are freaking hilarious. It's Shani and Rev. I've watched some old ones and I think there's even some that are fairly new, but oh, Gerri, he will crack you up. Just his commentary is so funny. I love it. She lies all the time. She's God. I'll find that channel. I'm telling you, it is so funny.
This seems to be out of order. Stand by. Yeah, we're out of order. We're back much earlier in the day in ground.
They got this guy back.
We've
What
seen
the
these
hell?
slides before. Pardon me. Because this is going to take us through the Burger King again.
Oh my God, that Gypsy Rose shit is
From
hilarious.
memory, I think it was slide 81 where we ought to be.
Did she? Yeah. Oh Lord. I saw that her nose made it to LA.
And I'm trying to keep the tech happy. I'm just trying to get back to that slide.
This is where we ought to be.
And can you tell us what we're seeing here?
This is showing the mapping of a voice call from Lori Vallow's 9562 phone to the 0143 phone. That one M45S signifies that it's a 1 minute 45-second duration call. It's going to zoom in and show the mapping on Lori's devices once again, essentially co-located with the device location from Charles Vallow's phone. And there we see the details of the call with the duration rendered in seconds, but that's 1 minute and 45 seconds.
And if we go to the next slide.
This is going to proceed showing the location data as Charles' device describes a path east and south, and then the next call record that is located along with the device location.
I know. I really
This time
wanted
we're looking
those
at an H-plane for Alex
to be
Cox's
viable. I did.
phone records indicating there was
Gerri,
a
check
connection
out
to a
this
tower
channel. You
in
are
that
gonna
area, and
piss
that area
yourself.
also
I'm
is
not
the same
kidding.
area where Charles' device is. So this shows more than likely that the device used by Alex Cox is in the same area as Charles Vallow's device.
And this is almost
Remember I
1
told you
o'clock.
guys, he said that
12:57 for the location from
Shani's
Charles
mom
Val's
is
device
a
and 12:59 for the voice call.
serial arm breaker. Oh my God.
And if we go to the next slide.
I can't
Here we
I
have
can't
an
make it
outgoing
funny
text
like
from
him.
the
He's so funny.
0143 number to Lori Vallow's 9562, and this is at 13:11, which is 1:11 p.m.
So another communication between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow on July 11th.
Between their devices, yes.
And if we go to the next slide, what are we seeing here?
These are more data points from Charles Vallow's phone. It shows it arriving in the area of Alex Cox's home. They're on 1658 East Shari Street in Santan Valley, and the time is going to be 13:26.
And if we go to the next slide.
This is another text, this time incoming to the 0143 number from Lori Vallow's 9562 number, and at 13:39.
If we go to the next slide.
Text going outgoing at 13:43 between the same two numbers.
And the next slide.
This is showing the mapping from Charles's device and then a rather large H plane for Lori Vallow's device that includes the Cox residence. The incoming call from Melanie Boudreau's number to Lori Vallow's number for a 5-minute 58-second call.
And if we go to the next slide.
Another text, this one outgoing from the 0143 number to Lori Vallow's 9562.
And the next slide.
This is the H plane that we left off with, and it's going to transition to show that the H planes for both Lori's phone and Alex's phone are in the same general area. And I believe that's the next slide. My apologies. This one just shows an H plane for Alex's for an incoming call. That -1's a default value. So I'm not sure who called it, isn't in the records.
And if we go to the next slide.
This shows Charles's location data still in that area, and then location data from Lori Vallow's 5452 number with an H plane that includes that residence. And this is at 1407 and 1408.
And there's an indication there that a number associated with Lori called Detective Inkland's desk.
Yes, Detective Inkland, the member of my team now. She was on the robbery homicide team at the time and involved in this investigation. And she's the one who received that phone call.
And do you know if she's also the detective that interviewed Lori Vallow?
Yes, she is.
And if we go to the next slide.
So this shows that and remember that there are two phones associated with Ms. Lori Vallow. So the 9562 H plane is the top one. The 5452 is the bottom one. Shows that they're overlapping and they're within 2 minutes of one another, basically showing that they're in a similar area that includes that residence.
And was Charles' phone also located within that vicinity?
It was. I don't believe it's a data point within this very narrow time frame, but it's been located in that location, and we'll see data coming up shortly that shows it still is.
And then I see a note down there, a number associated with Lori Vallow called the Valley of the Sun Mortuary.
Yeah, so highlighting this number here, if you take that number, which is 480-895-9232, I'm going to advance to the next slide now. That's the phone number for the Valley of the Sun Mortuary.
And what are we seeing here?
Ongoing text communication, this an incoming text between Lori Vallow's 9562 and the 0143 number at 1424.
Judge, can I have some foundation as to whether that's an outgoing or incoming text from?
Ms. Blake, do you want to inquire on that?
Detective Werther, were you able to determine if that was a text from Lori's device to Chad's device or Chad's device to Lori's device?
So it's incoming to Chad's device. If you look here below the number, it reads incoming SMS, which is derived from the raw records, and it indicates the target number. So this is being received
Oh
by
God,
the
Gerri,
0143
that's
number
hilarious.
because it's incoming. It's
Beetlejuice.
connected to the 9562 number.
And if we go to the next slide.
This is ongoing text showing an outgoing between the two same numbers, which indicates the 0143 would be sending a text outgoing, and it's at 1424.
And again, we were unable to locate the content of these text messages. Is that your understanding?
Correct. Typically, they're not preserved for very long, if at all, by providers, and I have not seen the content of any of these messages.
And if we advance to the next slide, what are we seeing here?
This is ongoing text, so this is an incoming text to the 0143 number from the same number, and it is at 1428.
And if we go to the next slide.
This picks up with those overlapping H planes down in Arizona, shows more of Charles Vallow's devices location data near the Cox residence, and it advances to an H plane at 1428 This is an incoming voice call from the 0143 number to Lori Vallow's 9562 number, and it lasts 11 minutes and 13 seconds.
And if we go to the next slide.
This is just showing the same call, but showing it as it was found in both record sets. This is showing the mapping related to where Mr. Daybell's device was at the time of this call, so that we see both locations.
And the device associated with Chad Daybell is showing as in somewhere in Idaho at that point.
Yes, that's right. So same call.
And what are we seeing here?
This is going to advance to where the device associated with Alex Cox calls Detective Inclan's desk. There it is. And it shows the location data extracted from Charles' device is in that same general area where that H plane is. And this is the call to Detective Inclan's desk from Alex Cox's device.
And if we advance to the next slide.
Well, this should show, excuse me, the animation appears not to be loading.
Would you like me to try from my end?
Yes, let me back up. If not, the static images will ultimately show the data anyway.
Could I just move to the next one?
Yeah, but I think it's all right. It's just going to, it was transitioning to the next thing. So to continue and use people's time well, this is the same data from the last slide, and then also showing, this is the data showing Charles Vallow's extracted location data, the call to Detective Inclan's desk, and then adding in a call received a minute later to Lori Vallow's phone from Melanie Boudreau, showing that all of these devices are in the same general area.
And if we advance to the next slide.
So this will show, and we're having computer issues today, but the animation's likely not going to play, but it will still show us where we're going. The Charles Vallow device will leave the area of the Alex Cox residence and arrives, as we see on this next still image, at 14:45 hours in the general area is when it leaves the general area of Alex Cox's residence. And then it's going to move on to the Four Peaks residence, where it is turned over to detectives. There we are. At 15:11, it's in the area of the Four Peaks residence, where detectives took possession of that device from Ms. Vallow.
And is that how you came to ultimately look at an extraction from that phone?
Yes, that's right. It's, as far as I know, still in Chandler Police property and evidence.
And what are we seeing here?
This is an H plane showing, once again, the service area for Alex Cox's device is back in the area of the Four Peaks Place address. And there is an outgoing call to a phone number that on the internet was associated with USAA. It is a 10-minute, 55-second call.
And then what are we seeing here?
At 16:02, we see a call between, specifically outgoing from Alex Cox's device to Lori Vallow's 9562. The H planes are not overlapping. It appears that they are most likely not in the same place, the devices at this point.
And then if we go to the next one.
This is further text communication and outgoing text from the 0143 to Lori Vallow's 9562 at 16:10. And then an incoming between the two devices at 16:46. This is a voice call outgoing from the 0143 number to Lori Vallow's 9562. It is a 30-minute, 13-second call, and it is at 17:42, 5:42 p.m.
And if we move on.
Okay. This is that same call, but from the other end, showing that at the time of that call, the service area for the Vallow device is mapping again in the area of the Four Peaks residence while they're on that call. And then this is an incoming text from Ms. Vallow's 9562 to the 0143 number at 18:16 hours, 6:16 p.m. And then an outgoing text in response at 18:57. And then at 19:09, we have an outgoing text again from 0143 to that same number of Ms. Vallow's. Then a voice call outgoing from the 0143 number to Ms. Vallow's 9562, 10 minutes and 59 seconds at 7:10 p.m. Okay. This is that same call map again on the Arizona side from Ms. Vallow's records, showing again in the area of the Four Peaks residence while that call is happening. another outgoing voice call, but this one from the 0143 number to that Valley of the Sun mortuary number that we saw earlier. This is at 7:34 p.m. and the call lasts 7 minutes and 14 seconds. In my analysis of that day, which is what I did the analysis on, it's the only call or text from that device to any number other than Ms. Vallows.
And Ms. Vallow had called the Valley, or a device associated with her had called the Valley of the Sun mortuary earlier in the day.
Correct.
And now the device or a device associated with Chad Daybell placed a call as well.
That's right. Now it is 7:50 p.m. and there's an incoming text from Ms. Vallows 9562 to the 0143 number. And then at 7:52 p.m., an outgoing text from the 0143 to the 9562. And then there is an outgoing 7-second call from 0143 to the 9562. That is at 7:54 p.m. And the 9562 number texts the 0143 number at 7:54 p.m. And then there is a 13-minute and 2-second call outgoing from 0143 to 9562 at 7:54 p.m. I believe it's just going to show us the mapping on the other end on the next slide. Yes, this is that same call in Arizona showing the service area for Ms. Vallow's device in the area of Four Peaks. And coincidentally, around that same time, there is an H-play in a service area for Mr. Cox's device, and it also is in an area that covers the Four Peaks address.
Hey, Lynn, good to see
Outgoing
you.
text communication, we are up to 9:10 p.m. and outgoing text from 0143 to 9562. Another outgoing text at 21:35.
I know
9:35 p.m.
YouTube
same numbers,
keeps taking down my
and that
Friday
brings
Night
us to the end of
Lives.
the exhibit.
And what are we seeing on this slide?
These were some takeaways from my analysis based on the claims that we had discussed previously, indicating, as you see on the screen, that it is very likely that Mr. Vallow's device arrived around 7:32 at the Four Peaks address and left around 7:50. And there are multiple instances where that device is then co-located with Ms. Vallow's devices and also her known location from video and other sources. So that seems to support the claim that she left.
Oh, it's
the Four Peaks
legit.
address with
Because we've
Mr.
been
Vallow's
playing
device,
music or doing
which, as I
something. We watched
understand it, was
videos
claimed to have
once.
been after the shooting had occurred.
I just need to go and
If all
edit
of
them
that is
out.
true, then there's at least a 45-minute delay
It takes
between that event and
forever
911 being called. Otherwise,
for
if
me
it
to do
wasn't
it
true, then
anyway.
it'd
I'm
be
not
hard to
very
see
good
how they
at
could
it.
have witnessed the event as they claimed. And then there are the communications that we've seen.
Yeah, I
between
think they
the
they
device
all need to
associated
go
with
to
Mr.
jail
Daybell and
too.
Ms. Vallow through the day, and
I do.
the call to the Valley of the Sun mortuary.
Zulema testified yesterday
And
and
at some
said that
point,
she was
as
given
part of the
immunity.
investigation, did you learn that Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow were engaged in some form of extramarital affair, or there were at least allegations of that?
That's my understanding.
But on this particular day, these communications were the day Charles Vallow died, correct?
That's right.
And the communications between Chad and Lori were throughout the day,
Yes, as we've seen.
and they started prior to Charles arriving at Lori's residence.
Yes, I believe the first one's in the 6 a.m. hour, Arizona time.
And there was a text from Chad to Lori around the same time that Charles Vallow arrived at the residence.
From that device to Lori's device, yes.
I have no further questions.
All right. Once you're ready, Mr. Pryor, you can cross
Thank
the
you,
bench.
Judge.
She totally does, doesn't she? She did. She was a good witness, though, for prosecution. I will say
Yeah, Judge.
she was not having it.
Officer, you
Oh.
testified earlier that there were text messages and phone conversations throughout the day between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. Is that right?
Between those devices, yes.
And what you didn't look at is the history of the phone correspondence between these two folks. Did you?
I did not personally do that.
You didn't look back what their pattern of communication was even a week before that, correct?
I did not.
And a week after that, you didn't look at that as well, did you?
I did not.
You are aware, though, by your analysis, that Lori Vallow called a mortuary sometime around 2 o'clock. And then there was a preceding number of calls and texts. And then Chad Daybell called the same mortuary, correct?
Yes, that's what the records show.
You happen to review the mortuary call that Chad Daybell made to the Sun Valley mortuary? Did you listen to that?
Oh, no, I've not listened to the audio recording.
Okay. So you don't know the nature of what Mr. Daybell said about obtaining further information or letting them know about what, you don't know anything about that, right?
I'm aware the recording exists. I have not listened to the recording.
And you're aware that the two of them were engaged in a extramarital affair.
That's what I've been told, yes.
Okay.
Are you aware
Now, the
of Melanie
issue
Gibb?
cell tower. Would you agree with me that cell tower coverage is the least effective of the ways to obtain data of the location of a cell phone?
How about the 7 gatherers?
I don't know
7
that it's the
twats.
least effective, but it obviously has an error rate greater than, for example, the GPS that we looked at, if that's what you're asking.
Okay. And the best way to determine a phone's location is actually to have the phone itself. Would that be fair?
I would agree with that.
Now, I noticed during this process that it appeared that Mr. Daybell was traveling to somewhere in Utah and then traveling back that day, correct?
That's what the device seems to be doing, yes.
Okay, and there are a number of these calls that are text messages and calls that are rather short in nature, correct?
I don't know the length of the texts, but as far as the calls go, the durations were all up on the screen for sure.
And what you also don't know is whether these calls were being received in due time or whether there was some sort of delay because of the traveling within the Utah-Idaho area out there, correct?
How do you mean a delay?
Well, phone reception. You're not able, through your analysis just on these numbers, to determine whether or not these calls actually were successful in any kind of communication. Isn't that true?
The duration can give an indication, of course, for a longer duration, that it's more likely that a voice call took place. But if I'm understanding you right, yes, it's possible, for example, that some of these went to voicemail. Absolutely.
And Mr. Daybell was, and for your, you know where Springville, Utah is, correct?
I'm not very familiar with Utah, so no,
You know where Salt Lake City is.
roughly.
And you looked on the map and you know that it's a distance between Salt Lake City and St. Anthony, Idaho, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Are you familiar with the topography and the area out there in terms of the quality of phone reception in that area?
I am not very familiar, no.
Okay. Now, from what I understand from your testimony is that, at least what you're suggesting is that based on Charles Vallow's phone and the delay reporting to 911, it's suggesting that Lori Vallow was present at the time Alex Cox shot Charles Vallow. Is that correct?
Partly, if I might elaborate.
Okay.
What I would say is that if Ms. Vallow makes the claim that she's present for the shooting, which I'm told she did, then the data suggests that either that claim is wrong, she wasn't actually there, or she was there was a very long delay before 911 was called. Either of those are possibilities in my mind.
Okay. And are those are really the two distinct possibilities, correct?
Yes, I think so.
So either Ms. Vallow is lying about being there when Alex Cox shot Charles Vallow, or the other scenario you suggested, correct?
Yes, that's right.
And if I noticed that on your display, you included that Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow were also present at the time. Is that right?
That's the claim that was made.
Okay. And there's no indication that by way of phone records or otherwise that Lori Vallow took JJ Vallow or Tylee Ryan anywhere else. Is that right?
I'm not aware of any location other than the ones that we examined.
Now, I looked at the tape of the Burger King, and you had mentioned that you saw at least one person in the vehicle. When I examined it, it appeared there were at least 3 people in the vehicle. Is it possible there were 3 people in the vehicle at the Burger King?
I'd say it's possible and indeed likely.
Oh, and indeed what?
Likely that there were 3 people.
That's all I have, Judge. Thank you. All right.
Any redirect?
And Detective Werther, you were asked if some of the calls maybe didn't go through right away. Do you recall that?
Yes.
In your presentation, did you denote the duration of the calls that you were able to locate?
Yes. When there was a voice call, I tried to put up what the duration was so that those viewing the presentation would know how long those calls were.
And were at least some of those calls of such a duration that you would believe those to be calls that were received where a conversation occurred?
I would.
And again, conversations between Chad and Lori began approximately 6:06 that morning,
That's the earliest one. Yes.
and they continued throughout the day.
Yes.
And you learned Chad and Lori were having an extramarital affair, correct?
Judge asked and answered.
That's my understanding.
And on July 11th of 2019, what call did you respond out to again?
That was the a call involving a shooting incident, the fatal shooting of Charles Vallow.
I have no further questions.
All right. That will conclude the testimony then of Detective Werther. So is he going to remain under subpoena from the state?
The state would release him from a subpoena.
What about the defense?
Judge, I haven't subpoenaed the detective. I have no intention of calling him back.
Okay, that concludes your testimony then. Thank you for appearing and testifying today. You may go ahead and step down.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, based on the nature of the testimony, the court's got a limiting instruction that I'm going to reread to the jurors. I've read this before, and this will also be included in your final instructions for deliberations. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, during the course of this trial, ladies and gentlemen, during the course of this trial, evidence has been introduced for the purpose of showing that the defendant or an alleged co-conspirator has committed acts other than that for which the defendant is on trial. Such evidence, if believed, is not to be considered by you to prove the defendant's character or that the defendant has a disposition to commit crimes. Rather, such evidence may be considered by you only for the limited purpose of proving the defendant's motive, opportunity, intent, plan, or absence of mistake or accident. So that's the limiting instruction. With that then, let me inquire from the state, given the time where we're at, does the state intend to call or seek to call another witness this afternoon?
Your Honor, can we just briefly, I know people are probably getting tired of the sidebars, but if we could just briefly chat about the schedule.
Yeah, let's do that quickly in a sidebar. Thank you, counsel.
Well, sorry. Right, I know. They both have fake voices, frazzled. And it's really irritating, actually. And did you notice yesterday how Zulema would say, you know, that's another one of those times when Lori was like, doesn't count for me. Like she was, like, you know, she used to think that was cute. Maybe now she doesn't. Maybe now she's a little bit smarter. I don't really know. I don't think anybody
All right,
involved here
counsel,
is
thank
real
you
smart.
for conferring with the court. We are going to go ahead and conclude with evidence for the day and take a recess until tomorrow. As I mentioned, we'll go until 2:00 tomorrow. There's one other matter the court will take up outside the presence of the jurors, just outside the presence of the public, just with the attorneys, but on the record here as well. So for those reasons, I think this is a good time to break for the day. So ladies and gentlemen of the jury, again, thank you for your attentiveness today. And I will advise you, as I have at the end of each day, please don't discuss this case with anyone else or amongst yourselves. Wait to do that until the time for deliberations as well. Don't do anything to investigate or look the case up in any way. Or if you see the case in any sort of media coverage, news, etc., on your devices, please avoid looking into that. And that way you'll be able to sign your declarations in the morning that you've complied with the instruction. So thank you again. And we will commence again tomorrow morning with additional evidence and a new witness tomorrow, starting at 8:30 at the normal time. So with that in mind, we will be in recess for the day. And thank you also those in attendance today for complying with the court's conduct orders.
All right, please.
Wow. So that's it. I noticed that she has a lot of time. Yeah, no, she does. Yeah. You know, you wonder how, you know, Chad Daybell could get a group of people to sit and listen to anything he had to say. I mean, it's really hard listening to him do his, you know, his blessings and stuff. They're long and irritating and all that. So, you know, these cannot be really bright people. They just can't. And I cannot believe that Melanie Pawlowski was calling him dad. That is so gross. Ugh. But, you know, I don't know what to say. These people were just enthralled with Chad Daybell. Just wild. Absolutely wild. I am positive you couldn't keep my attention. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and for other people, it's just like nails on a chalkboard. I think some of their people believed in it. I think that Alex did believe. I believe Alex believed him. I do. But I don't believe they believed themselves. They knew they were full of shit. There's no way, conveniently, every single person that stands in your way is dark. Stop. It's a bunch of horse manure. But I'm going to have to jump in the car and run some errands. I got to get the heck out of here. Right. They were looking for money. There's no way. There's no way. I disagree with you. What did you say? Oh, we made it through day 19. They all talk the same. Yeah. I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm lost. I think some of those people might have believed him. Oh, I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Oh, God. Hi, Life Rewind. We're actually getting ready to end this. I love you too. I'm like, I don't even know what I said. What the heck? Oh, have a good night, Mama. Yeah, everybody have a good one. I'm going to go run amok. And I will see you tomorrow. Love ya. Thank you. Shut up, Hondo.